Hello, good evening. We'll begin our workshop here. We're starting off with a presentation from the Shelter Committee, and we have our two co-chairs here, Craig Settlemeyer and Amy Smith. And I know several of the Shelter Committee members are in the audience. If you can just raise your hands, that would be great. Thank you all very much for serving. I deeply appreciate it. And with that, I turn it over to you two.
Greetings, Mr. Mayor, Lewiston City Council. My name is Craig Settlemeyer. I'm a co-chair of the Ad Hoc Shelter Committee.
And I'm Amy Smith, co-chair with Craig.
And if I'm allowed to interrupt for the one time I get to interrupt, if the councilors can please hold questions until the end, that we can move through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So to begin, I just want to say it's been a pleasure co-chairing this committee. We began in April. We've been holding bi-weekly and weekly meetings, working as quickly and as hard as we could to meet the deadline and the goal of having information and ideas and proposals to consider before the end of September and in time for tonight's council meeting. We have 17 members that have served on the committee. It's been a very collaborative effort. I am extremely grateful to the members that have given their time, and I'm extremely grateful to the public and to the council for engaging with us in this process, making it as open and transparent as we could, and hopefully responsive to the public's input and your input. What we've presented, what was sent to you and what we're presenting tonight is in draft form. So what we mean by that is, we were literally writing it right up into the moment we gave it to Heather last Thursday. We are still accepting public comment. Ideally, we finish receiving that by August 1st. So what we hear, from tonight's discussion will be very important as we consider revisions and omissions that are in the report. And we intend to have the finalized version before you in time to just digest it before the council meeting in August. So this is an iterative process, and it's not complete yet. But it's been exciting. I have learned a lot. As I think many of you know, my specialty is housing. My specialty is not homeless shelters. And I've considered my role as the co-chair is to basically facilitate the expertise of the committee members and the interests of the public and try to produce something that is as useful to all of you as possible. And what we heard from the council during our workshop and the previous council meetings on the subject was that you wanted some time to learn more on the subject and consider your options, both in terms of what the community actually needs and what kinds of tools are available to help improve your regulatory oversight of this activity. So we took that request very seriously and are excited to present to you, what we've come up with tonight. So to begin, we would like to, I guess, sort of establish that the primary cause, and we looked at, we did interviews, we have direct testimony from people who are homeless, we looked at research on the subject, articles, and what things keep pointing to, pretty much in all the data that you look at, is the primary cause of homelessness is insufficient income and the housing shortage. There are a number of other, specific circumstances that can lead people to homelessness, but in most of the cases, if they had the income, either the earned income or the assistance somehow, and the housing was available, then the homelessness part would be addressed. As an example, so within that issue, the leading cause of homelessness for women is domestic abuse. They are dealing with a partner that's abusing them. They don't have the income or the available, or even if they get a voucher, there might not be an affordable housing unit or a private market unit that would accept a housing voucher. And so in that circumstance, they're choosing between the abuse or homelessness, and in many cases, they'll choose homelessness. If they had a housing unit that was affordable to them, then they would not be homeless. So that's lots of examples of this, but that's just one to try to illustrate how if the income and the housing were there, they could get the help they need and would not be counted towards that homeless population. I would add that on the issue of income, I think in general, when you look at really hot housing markets where there's a really wide disparity of income, like the wider the range in income, the more extreme you'll see homelessness and the housing challenges. And so the cities with the hottest housing markets, the most popular cities, are in some ways dealing with this to the greatest extremes. We touch on our report a little bit about how we're seeing those trends develop more and more locally, but there's other examples, Portland, Maine, for example, where the issue is even more extreme in part because of the range of low income to high income, and you can see that in the housing wages required to afford a 2-bedroom apartment there. We can touch on that later. So, talking about Lewiston, there are, we estimate, over 1,000 people who experienced homelessness in Lewiston over the past 12 months. The shelters that we have 83 shelter beds in Lewiston. And of those 83 shelter beds were full on average 88% of the year. And as a result, they were declining guests anywhere from 20% to 70% of the time that they applied. So that rejection rate is just folks coming to the shelter, requesting a bed, and being declined because the beds are full. That percentage does not include people that are denied due to ineligibility because of the programming requirements of the shelter, or folks who are deterred because they're aware of the programming requirements of the shelter. There are people that are being served by the current system. We name them pretty specifically in the document, but our assessment included, who is being served and who is not being served. And I think where we're looking to spend more time is on the question of who's not being served and how can we address that. And I'm flipping through the document. I'm jumping to page 19 for those who have it and wish to follow along. And I'm going to read exactly what's on the page because the wording is important. So for any folks at home looking at the slide, I'm going to read the full sentence for each of these, which would not look great on the slides because that's the most accurate description of what's going on. So the following individuals are not served by Lewiston's existing emergency shelter system. For the general population of adults and families who become homeless for any reason other than human sex trafficking or sexual exploitation, Lewiston does not have any 24/7 emergency shelter beds operated by paid professional staff. For adults living with a physical disability who are not survivors of human sex trafficking or sexual exploitation, Lewiston does not have any ADA accessible shelter beds. For homeless families who wish to remain together, Lewiston does not have any shelter beds. For adults and families seeking to obtain emergency shelter and then be connected with on-site caseworkers, mental health professionals, and housing navigators, Lewiston has no shelter beds. For families seeking to obtain emergency shelter and who do not wish to participate in prescribed religious services, Lewiston has no shelter beds. For any adult or family seeking to obtain emergency shelter and who are dealing with a substance use disorder and need a shelter where they can be supported by trained staff as they achieve sobriety, there are no shelter beds. And lastly, for any adult or family with serious mental illness who are seeking emergency shelter, and require trained staff to support them, there are no shelter beds. An additional point that was added since the report was that there are no shelter beds for unaccompanied minors, specifically under the age of 10. So that's a substantial portion of the homeless population, and it's something that we think can be remedied. It's service that we'd like to see improved, and we think it's important that any, whether it's private organizations looking to start a shelter or policy that the city's considering, we should be sensitive to how that affects these groups and their ability to obtain service in the event that they become homeless. So that was a big piece of what we were thinking about as we developed our recommendations. In general, the framework that we recommend, thinking about this issue within is housing first. What we want to do is, shelter is it's not a permanent solution. It's no one's ideal situation to be in. Shelter should be as brief, and emergency overnight shelter should be as brief and rare as possible. What we want to do is, if necessary, intervene with emergency shelter to prevent people from dying in the wintertime, extreme conditions, or whatever other hazards there are. Help them stabilize, connect them with the services they need, and move them into permanent housing solutions as quickly as possible. So housing first, permanent housing solutions, that's what, whether we're talking about shelter or other types of interventions, that's the long-term goals. It's really hard to do much else to keep a job, to access services if you're concerned about not having a roof over your head each night. Wraparound services that are obtained when one is being sheltered. So wraparound services are those things that are going to help connect them to whether it's mental health support, whether it's specifically a housing navigator that can provide both vouchers and a relationship with local landlords to help them find their unit. Wraparound services are key to really moving people out of the shelter. Like, you can get them there, but once they're there, how do you move them beyond that? So wraparound services is going to help them develop more permanent self-sufficiency and support systems and move beyond that. And accessibility. So as I just named on the previous slide, there's a number of ways in which our shelter services are not accessible to the entire population of people who are homeless. So anything that we do should be enhancing accessibility for that population going forward. So beyond just the accessibility issue, but we can touch more on that, there are some other gaps in service that our research identified. One is that eShap housing navigation services are not available primarily at our adult and family shelters. So eShap is the housing navigation piece, so it's a position funded by Maine Housing, and it's helping people identify resources specifically to get them rehoused. And when one participates in eShap, it comes with certain requirements and regulations of Maine Housing, and our adult shelters are not currently participating in that. Whereas our youth shelter and our shelters that support victims of domestic abuse and sexual exploitation, they do have eShap navigators in their facilities helping their guests. On-site wraparound services, I think I just discussed that, but that's largely the case as well as with eShap. Those same centers don't have necessarily on-site wraparound services. Now, I say that, but I don't mean to minimize the services that they are providing to their guests. I think the other adult shelters are doing the best with the resources they have. It is very difficult. I think it's very difficult to operate a shelter in general, whether your funding's from Maine Housing or not. I imagine it's particularly challenging to operate it completely with private funds. So it's incredible that the shelters funded only with private funds have achieved that. I think the service they provide to the community is valuable. It doesn't go as far as the services can to move people into permanent housing, as would be the case if they, were receiving, participating in the state system with Maine Housing. To that end, coordinated entry is also not being accessed by the adult shelters, though it sounds like Maine Housing is sort of packaging coordinated entry in a manner that will perhaps give them that option to access that service in the near future. But the idea with coordinated entry is that, again, they're networked with the statewide resources, and helping folks find the best place to locate where they're going to get the most services that benefit them. So that an example of that is, so when we looked at like the averages of folks that end up in our shelters, it was 70% Lewiston, 85% Androscoggin County, and then there's that other 15%. So if folks end up in a shelter in Lewiston, and they are not from Androscoggin County, coordinated entry helps them get back to the community that they're from, or the next closest thing that has the housing and services available to them. Because that's what most people would like to do, is stay in their home community, and it's, again, lack of housing, the housing shortage that is oftentimes the reason that they leave. Daytime access, I think, is a really big piece to this. Something that we heard in testimony from folks who are homeless. Most of the shelters don't provide, they're not 24/7, so they have curfews, they don't provide daytime access, and when that is the case, and again, it takes resources to do that, so it's not easy to provide 24/7 service, but when that is the case, what it means is that folks have to leave the shelter when they may not be ready to. They might be dealing with, mental health issues that they'd prefer to just rest in their private room and recover from. They might, depending on what the storage policy is, they might have to be, carrying stuff with them. But in any event, it forces people onto the street when they might not be ready to be on the street, which creates greater likelihood to potentially put them in conflict with the general public. It also makes holding a job difficult. There are people who are homeless that are employed, that were interviewed as a part of this research process, and for them, the curfew is making them choose between their job and shelter, which is, I don't think anyone wants to see that scenario. I mean, no one wants to see homelessness in general. I think that scenario is particularly difficult to accept. So promoting 24/7 access, I think, would make a big difference. Accessibility, I've already covered a fair bit, so I will keep going here. So, as far as estimating the shelter bed needs goes, the statewide average of people who are homeless when the point-in-time count was conducted on the coldest night in Maine, the rate of people who are homeless relative to the state population was 0.25%. So when you apply that to Androscoggin County, that gets you to 270 people potentially unsheltered at that time. The point-in-time count is considered by most shelter operators to be a very low estimate because it's not using, first of all, it's not using the broader definition of homelessness that the McKinney-Vento definition uses. Secondly, it requires some pretty specific it's not like you just see someone and then check a box as the count. Like, they need to answer questions, and the questions need to be completed. And if they're not completed, then they're not counted. So the bar to actually count someone is a bit high. Anyway, that's how they arrive at this number. So if we applied that number to Androscoggin County and we count Lewiston's 83 beds, what that's showing us is that 187 beds would be needed to assure that folks are not unsheltered on that coldest night in Maine each year. That is how we arrived at that number, and I think there's more. I'm sure there'll be a lot to discuss on that. I think there are different ways of approaching that need. It's probably that element of our recommendation. I expect our committee will have a lot more to discuss on, but I think we felt it was important that we really look at that number and try to understand really what that means for folks, and how many people are vulnerable on a given night in our community. So we did 2 public listening sessions. We received other feedback from the public. We were obviously most of our members were present for the city council meetings on this, and we were really interested in concerns of public safety, and of course we heard from council on this stuff as well, and other concerns of the public. So in the plan, we went sort of point by point and tried to address each of these as thoroughly as we could. I will, in the interest of time, I'm going to be brief, but we did. I guess I'll touch on some highlights. For public safety. We believe that a well-managed facility can be safe, and we have some recommendations specifically for what a well-managed facility means. One example that we offer that we learned from the shelter in Waterville that just transitioned from being a high barrier to a low barrier shelter was a good neighbor policy. And what that policy requires is that shelter guests have to, observe certain rules of conduct in the shelter, but that those rules of conduct extend within a 2-block radius of the shelter. And that staying at the shelter, adhering to that policy for each guest is a condition of staying at the shelter. Furthermore, that's not just for the public safety, but for the guest's safety. It's advised that, anyone who's going to operate a shelter needs to have a policy and a plan in place to protect their guests. Because they're very vulnerable people, can be exposed to predatory behavior by human traffickers, drug dealers, and so shelters should have policies and plans in place to protect their guests from that kind of activity as well. As another note, the people who experience homelessness are actually the ones generally at much greater risk of their safety. They experience physical violence at far greater rates than the average person who is not homeless, anywhere from, I think the report was 7 to 10 times as much. The recent example of 2 teenagers in Bonnie Park in Auburn attacking 2 homeless individuals as part of a social media post is an example of that kind of terrible circumstance. So it's real. For that reason, attacks against people who are homeless was made a hate crime in Maine in 2006. The issue of concentration is also a concern. This is something that we looked into in Portland. Portland is starting to deconcentrate their shelters. In Lewiston, our zoning sort of already creates the effect of concentration by just giving a very small area in which shelters can be developed. We are very sensitive to the issue of location, which is the next item. Obviously, the wellness center at the Armory created, I think, a lot of issues relative to location, as well as the scale of congregate beds that led to a lot of police calls there. So one of our recommendations is to expand zones, including Centerville, Riverfront, and Urban Enterprise, and Mill. These are all neighborhoods that are highly impacted by the circumstance of homelessness already. I think would experience a lot of relief from solutions to it. It's still not a huge, it might double or a little bit more than double the size of land area available to develop shelters in our community, and in doing so would help address some of the issues around concentration. Location I spoke to briefly. The concern around serving too many other communities. There are, I think there's 42 emergency shelters throughout Maine. Generally what we find is that communities, people who access shelters have a reason to be in that community. They're from the surrounding region. They know someone in town. It's not too often that folks are traveling very far to access emergency shelter. So we did get a little bit more into that. Okay, I'm going to move a little bit quicker to respect everyone's time. We looked closely at substance use. Substance use it's a huge issue in Maine. It's an issue that people are very upset about in terms of how deeply it's affecting people's lives, how public substance use is in many cases. And what we found from the research and from interviews was that substance use, it absolutely is related to homelessness. It's not the lead, there's nothing that we saw that indicated it's the leading cause of people becoming homeless. Many people do turn to substance use when they become homeless. And that, of course, can affect their ability to become rehoused and obtain services. Just as a point of clarification, there's no shelters today allow substance use at their facility, and no shelters that have been proposed would allow substance use at their facilities. It did, during some of the public comments, it seemed like there was some confusion around whether that was being considered, and it's not in any discussion that we've had. Local cost is something that, it's up to each community. It's up to Lewiston to the extent it wants to participate in ever financially supporting a shelter, particularly with the local share of the budget. Most shelters are not receiving much of any direct funding from the local community. I would expect if Lewiston were to participate financially, it'd most likely be with the federal grants that Lewiston has that are allocated specifically for that purpose. That money like CDBG and home is not allowed to be used to offset general budget costs. It's meant to help people in poverty. We looked at what's going on in Auburn. We looked at what's going on in Portland. We looked on what's going on in Brunswick and Waterville. Let's see, I haven't even got to the recommendations yet. So I encourage folks to look at that, or in the questions, I'm happy to speak more to that. In the interest of time, I'm going to get to the recommendations here. So our recommendations include, in the short term, we believe another temporary shelter should be established, something similar to the Ramada. It was an effective program. It helped, I think an important number that really stood out in my mind, someone that does field work, with the Lewiston Police Department, that's going out to the camps, that's going out to the streets and trying to get people who are homeless rehoused, was finding in the field like a 10% success rate with rehousing folks. He was seeing those same folks show up at these shelters, first the Armory and then the Ramada, and was seeing them be rehoused at a 60% success rate. And the difference was, in the field, people feel super defensive and very vulnerable and very on edge, and they just don't want to talk or deal with anyone. When they have a chance to lay down, rest, build a little bit of trust with the people on site, then after a little bit of time, maybe it takes a few nights, they are ready to open up and make a plan to improve their situation. So we think it's important to do that to save lives this coming winter, and we should be looking to support the development of one or more permanent shelters, again, that are meeting the needs of the groups that we identified that are not currently being served. Ideally, the shelters are providing 24/7 service, are utilizing the Good Neighbor policy, and are providing on-site wraparound services, and also providing non-congregate beds, that is a minimum of one bedroom per household. It seems like that what is the growing best practice is to move away from congregate shelter for a number of reasons that I think are obvious, but increased privacy leads to increased health outcomes and reduces potential conflicts on site. I know in a moment you're gonna hear from David Hediger on the draft ideas for the ordinance. we have specific recommendations around licensing. We tried to address as much of what we heard from the council as possible. What David just worked on, is very new to us as well, so we haven't had a time to digest it and comment, but we are eager to hear what council says in response. And I guess I haven't had a chance to emphasize that, we think it's important that whatever happens, we should be sensitive to how regulations affect both future services, but also existing shelters, and that we should be, considering the service they've provided this community and, whatever changes they're going to be exposed to, being sensitive to, how long those transition times may take for them to change anything about their services. So the last things I'll touch on briefly are, in terms of funding, beyond regulations, if the city wants to play a more active role in the issue of shelters, if there's a very specific kind of shelter, either in terms of where the city thinks it should be located or the kinds of programming the city should have, the city can do an RFP process where it can say, this is exactly the kind of shelter we want. We're willing to put this much home money or this much CDBG money towards it, and solicit competitive proposals from the best and most qualified developer and operator to do that. That's one way to just sort of lead and incentivize a little bit more the types of outcomes that the city would like if the city wishes to become more engaged. Obviously, traditionally, the city's been pretty passive towards this issue. It's just whatever private operators come up with. Housing is actually, we're focused on shelters because that's the charge of our committee. Permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, permanently affordable housing, those are the real solutions that are going to reduce the homeless population. This is just, shelters is what's going to, shelters in a coordinated system is what's going to move people out of homelessness faster. But if we want to talk about prevention, and if we want to talk about having places for people to go, because that's another thing we heard from shelter operators is I've got someone, they're ready to move on with their life, but they just don't have the housing units available. Housing is sort of where it's at as far as those longer term solutions. And I think we're at time, but we obviously talk more about services and the recommendations. I appreciate everyone's patience. It's a 46-page report. We put a lot into it, and again, we are very grateful for the City Council giving us this opportunity to share our findings and consider them as we move forward. So I know you've got other things to discuss, but happy to take questions or discuss anything.
Yeah, we have a few minutes for questions from councilors if they so choose. Councilor Pease?
I don't really have a question. I just want to commend you on the report. You guys did an excellent job.
Thank you.
There's a lot of information there. Of course, getting it in a short amount of time to dissect all of what you did is a little more difficult, but I do appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Thank you very much, Councilor Pease.
Councilor Scott?
I too want to reiterate the tremendous work that was done here. I was thoroughly impressed when I read through all of this. You researched, you did a lot of work here, and I also researched and looked back at the meetings that we've already had on this, and I really feel that you answered just about every question that was asked of you, and I really appreciate that. I'm hoping that now that we have some of this work done, we are really going to look to moving forward really quickly on this. I, too, am very concerned about what's going to happen this winter. I came in early tonight specifically to take a walk around Kennedy Park. And just looking on Park Street and Kennedy Park, it's everywhere now. It's prevalent. I'm seeing people on the corner of Bates and Main Street by Sam's. I'm seeing a person regularly at the United Methodist Church on Sabatta Street. It's just everywhere right now. And I'm hoping that with this work and with our conversation on the ordinance, we're really going to move forward. And I thank you again for all the hard work you've done.
Thank you.
Councilor Jelinas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been waiting anxiously for this report, and I so appreciate the amount of work that's here. It's an excellent report, and the recommendations divvied up into those 6 categories really helped me look at those questions that have been asked and the answers. So what was completed from April 4th until last week when this was submitted is very thorough. It's very comprehensive. For me, it dispelled a lot of the confusion that I had from listening to public comment, listening to myself, fellow counselors. It really clarified a lot, and I know that there was a whole lot of digging that you did to get this information. I appreciate the extensive outreach. I found the testimony particularly powerful, so thank you for sharing that with us. I wonder, you know, I know that there was a listening session at the Armory and then another one at the library, and I don't know how well attended those were. I wasn't able to make those. But one of my questions is, were they well attended? And then my next question would be, is there plans for an additional listening session at any one point? Because I feel like this community support around something as huge as this and understanding is just big, so that's something on my mind. And then lastly, I would just say, you know, I got done reading this and really just felt like this puts us in a posture of really being able to, you know, move forward with the information that we need and get something done and put in place by October, so thank you.
So to answer your question, I think, I mean, our strategy of getting input was to do as much outreach as we could, you know, to the shelters, to people who are homeless. The listening sessions were one example of that. The locations we chose were specifically in places, you know, the library and the Armory, places where we know there's a very high visibility of people experiencing homelessness. The turnout, you know, the turnout was, the seats were not packed. We definitely had the people who attended felt very strongly on the subject, and we heard from people coming at it from a number of different perspectives in terms of their support or fear of the creation of any more shelters, concerns about substance use, people who had experienced homelessness that were willing to speak. So I mean, we definitely heard a lot from the listening sessions, but it wasn't the only thing that we relied on for our public input.
Councilor Herman.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you both for co-chairing this committee. I know I've definitely learned a tremendous amount being on the committee, and I also want to thank all the members of the committee for contributing their time and their expertise on the subject. I think this report is a great place to start moving forward on this issue, and I hope that we definitely can get something in place by this winter and continue to help improve outcomes in the community. So thank you.
If councilors have further questions, they can contact you both, or sorry. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I just reiterate that. Yeah, we're looking to sort of get as much. I mean, council's input will be taking at any point in this process. But as far as for anyone, members of the general public that are listening, we'd really like input ideally by August 1st. I think that's going to give us the best chance of incorporating it into the finalized version of this. And we've already received a lot of comments. They've been very helpful. There's a lot to this, so you know, we are still learning, and the revised version will reflect the additional input that we get. And we think the report, we've gotten a good response from the report, and I think it's been like a nice way of just sort of putting out there, like, here's what we know, you know, tell us what we got right or wrong, and it's helping create conversations that weren't happening before.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate you both being here, and thank you for your service. Councilor Scott?
Can we just remind the public where they might be able to read this report, so if they want to make comments on it and look at it, that they can have that language available?
Excellent. I believe it's, if you go to the mayor's webpage on the city, under Shelter Committee, I think it's listed there.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you both. Director Hediger.
Hello. So I've been asked to draft an ordinance basically to get the council to start thinking what it might look like if an ordinance was adopted. I was on the Shelter Committee. There was a couple staff on that committee as basically in an advisory role. I too learned a lot through that process, and I agree they did a really nice job, and there's a lot of information there that hopefully people digest. I think a lot of it could be incorporated into an ordinance, and I actually think some of the things that in the draft ordinance, I think there's some overlap there that already exists. Again, the point of putting this in front of you folks now is just to get you folks thinking about what an ordinance might look like and what language it might consist of. Similar to what the committee did, we looked at existing ordinances, or I looked at existing ordinances from Portland, from Brunswick, from Waterville, some of the existing language that we have in our ordinance now, and just seeing how that might work. What are some of the similarities, and try to take into consideration the comments that the council provided to administration in response to some of the questions that Heather Hunter sent out to you folks, and tried to incorporate those in here. So with that, I don't know how much detail you folks want to go through on this, but I'll say there are some certainly big open-ended questions there that certainly staff is going to need direction from. I think the committee is going to want to weigh into this as well, because this is a new document for them as well, and I would appreciate their input into this, because they certainly have more experience and expertise in this subject matter than I do. One thing that I think needs to be addressed, and you'll see this in the committee's report as well, is whether or not we're going to want to license existing shelters in the community. The way it's been drafted right now, they would not have to be subject to licensing. Although personally, I'm not sure that's the route that the city should go. That's something that will need to be discussed. You'll see in the shelters committee work as well, there's some discussion about how to treat existing shelters. But that is a big deal. I mean, the existing shelters right now, they're not really subject to any requirements other than general life safety requirements. And if there's any expectation to raise the bar or have everybody on a level playing field, that's something that the council is going to want to consider with the existing establishments in town right now. The way it's drafted at this point, you folks would be reviewing and approving new licenses, and then any renewals would be through city staff, through the clerk's office. Again, that's, if you folks want to see new licenses every time or renewals every time, that's fine, but just to have you folks thinking about what will the actual review and approval process be when somebody submits a shelter license. So again, I think it would probably make sense for you folks to initially renew and approve them, but is that necessarily for every renewal? Something to consider. Application requirements. There was discussion amongst the council about what kind of background checks are going to be necessary, and how far down the bench does that go within the organization of the shelter. I know the committee has some suggestions about that. Again, I don't know where that line should be drawn. Is it just the managers? Is it the members? Is it all employees of the shelter? Or where does that line want to be drawn with respect to background checks for people involved in the services being provided? There are some requirements in here. If people are following along, I'm on page 3 of application submissions, where it talks about operations plan, and it talks about requiring what's the experience and qualifications of the management staff. That was something that we heard from some folks. Good neighbor agreement. That was something that the shelter committee brought up, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And in fact, when you go through the shelter committee's list, you'll see there's a number of overlapping measures here. I don't know that the council and the committee are going to be that far off on a lot of the recommendations. I think it's, the devil's in the details, and it's going to be this much that I think everybody gets hung up on. Otherwise, the majority of this, I really do think that the council and the committee are going to be on the same page with. The thought is that these licenses would be valid for 1 year. They got to be renewed annually. That would require inspections. You'll see in here that there's inspections required by planning and code enforcement in the fire department. So basically, we would be looking at sanitation issues from a sanitation and building code issues from a planning and code enforcement perspective. Fire department would be looking at life safety issues. When we talk about sanitation, I know that was an issue that was brought up several times. The thought at this point would be we would be just tying it into our property maintenance code. Our property maintenance code is the ordinance that we use to inspect all multifamily dwellings now. The state has requirements for lodging establishments being hotels, motels, and inns. I don't think that's the route we want to go. I think property maintenance would be more broad but yet encompassing, so it could potentially deal with electrical issues, mold issues, overall cleanliness, things of that nature. So I think that's an easier route, and that's already an ordinance that we have adopted that we apply to multifamilies. But again, if there's specific requirements there, that's something that we need to be discussing and considering. Hours of operation, the suggestion here is that these be 24-hour operations, 7 days a week. Again, that's not, that addresses one of the shelter concerns about, what's happening during the daytime with these facilities. If you're gonna operate a shelter, 24/7. Same with requiring Maine State Housing Authority monitoring. Again, these are some of the requirements that are required in other municipalities as well and are being recommended both by staff and the committee, so duplication there. As far as the number of beds, I've left that blank. I think Craig gave you guys an idea of what approximately might be necessary for beds. I have no idea what the right number is for that. So, I mean, again, we're gonna need to discuss that as a group. I think the shelter will probably get some more, shelter committee would hopefully get some more input as to what a good number is there. There was discussion about buffers from different types of uses, and the shelter committee has a couple maps in there that were produced to give you an idea. Discussion talked about proximity of schools, parks, and daycares. I've drafted at this point that 1,000 feet, a shelter couldn't be within 1,000 feet of a school, park, or daycare. I believe the committee recommended that there wouldn't be setbacks from churches or parks. Again, we're gonna need to come to some conclusion as to if there are setbacks and what are those setbacks gonna be. The other setback would be 1,000 feet from any pre-existing homeless shelter. I don't know that that's going to be a concern, but do we want to have these all located in a general area, or do we want them spread out throughout the community? I think you'll see in the report, the reference was made to Portland, how there was a thought about having them all in one area at one time. Does that make sense for Lewiston as well? That kind of ties into the zoning. Craig mentioned that we only allow shelters in 2 zoning districts right now, Neighborhood Conservation B and Downtown Residential, which is basically your neighborhood, your tree street type neighborhoods. Do we want to expand that to other zoning districts? Again, I'm going to be looking for direction from you folks. The committee has recommended a few more zoning districts in the downtown area, where there certainly is a presence of homeless activity. So is that an area that we should allow shelters to occur in as well? I would say that if the council wants to go in the direction of having buffers from, whether it's any of those uses, schools, parks, daycares, other homeless shelters, you're going to limit the opportunities in the community unless you open it up to other zoning districts. So you're either going to have to do something with the buffers, no buffers, smaller buffers, or expand the zoning districts in which shelters should be established. There was reference to appeals. Everyone agrees Board of Appeals would be the place to go if a council denies a license, or upon a renewal, staff denied a license for some reason, then the mechanism to appeal that would be the Board of Appeals. All of that, what I just said, it would be found in the Code of Ordinances. So as you folks know, when amendments are made, we have one Code of Ordinances, but there's a zoning and land use code, which is part of the Code of Ordinances, and then there's the rest of the ordinances. If we make any changes to the zoning and land use code, that's going to require a recommendation from the planning board. So everything I just discussed with you at this point is really just in the Code of Ordinances. It would not involve the planning board unless there's a desire to change zoning districts. You add, delete, whatever the case may be, then we're going to need to get the planning board involved for a recommendation there as well. We may also need to get the planning board involved if we want to change definitions of shelters. I've added some definitions in there. I don't know that there needs to be a distinction, but quite frankly, the 2 definitions that I provided there are straight from the town of Brunswick, where they had homeless shelters apartment style and a homeless shelter non-apartment style. Do we need to make that distinction? Does the council or the planning board think that there makes a difference if you have an apartment style shelter? So an apartment style shelter would be each unit has sleeping, cooking, and bathroom facilities for each occupant there, essentially an apartment, versus more of a dormitory type style or shared bathroom like a lodging house or boarding house. Do we feel differently about apartment type style shelters being located in a section of the community versus a lodging type establishment? Those changes would impact the zoning and land use code, so again, that would involve the planning board. all of these things currently are, all these shelters are currently regulated as a conditional use. So if we did absolutely nothing and we kept things the same as they are right now, they would require a trip to either the Board of Appeals or the Planning Board to get a conditional use permit. So that already exists. I don't think there would be any reason to change that necessarily. So if the city decides to add additional licensing requirements, at first they would need to get a conditional use permit from either the Board of Appeals or Planning Board, and then they would seek their license approval after that. And the license approval will be annual. Conditional use permit is one-time approval. The only reason they would ever need a new conditional use approval is if they actually change something specific to their conditional use. And that's one of the advantages of regulating something as a conditional use, is the reviewing authority can put specific conditions on it, like the number of beds, the hours of operation, the number of staffing. Those conditions that would be from the conditional use permit would then carry over to the licensing, because there shouldn't be any difference in them. I suppose a license could be a smaller number than the conditional use, but it couldn't be the other way around. They couldn't say conditional use for 100 beds and they go get a license for 105 beds. No, it would they either need to be the same or less. I guess the importance in raising the the approval process is tied to the moratorium, which I believe is September 25th?
September
25th, I believe. However this process plays out here, if we need to get the planning board involved, it's one planning board meeting for an amendment before them, and then it's 2 meetings before you folks. If there's no changes involving zoning and land use, then it's clearly with you folks, and still potentially 2 meetings with you folks if everything, goes smoothly and is the path of least resistance. So this is a very, I would say, rough document. I would expect you folks to have comments, just like you would to the Shelter Committee. I expect the Shelter Committee to have comments as well. But this is just to get an idea or a feel for you folks as to how something could be structured and how it would probably be administered.
questions from the council. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Director Hedeker. This is an excellent start for us to work from, and I think we can make something good out of all of this. I only had a couple of things. One about, you talked about council approval, where the council already approves other licenses, like liquor licenses and amusement licenses. I don't see as this would be any different from that as far as the approval on an annual basis. It would give the council opportunity to provide feedback if certain citizens around the shelters are having specific issues. They can be brought up at that time and addressed. So I think the oversight, while not extremely rigid, I think it would be a good opportunity for us to deal with situations like that. As far as buffers go, I think that we could remove some of the buffers. My feeling is that buffers around churches, a lot of the churches do outreach for the homeless, and I think that to keep them away from those churches would be a mistake. I think that would help open up more area for development of shelters. And the other one buffer would be, I think, allowing family shelters or teen shelters near parks and schools would be a positive also. It would give the young members of homeless families a place to play if it's near a park or a school that has recreational areas. And I think that would be a plus also. And that would also help open up more areas. As far as the zoning goes, at this point in time, I don't think I would be in favor of increasing the different types of zones at this point. But I would be open to it future as we get further into this. But thank you for all of your hard work.
Councilor Herman.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Hedeker, for putting this together. I was wondering if it would be possible to pull up that buffer map on the laptop, just so we can all see the Okay, yeah,
Is it
it is
good?
it is in the packet as well, but if it's possible, it might be helpful. I just have some concerns with some of the restrictions on page 5.
I don't know where you have it.
Try that one.
That's not the one you want.
Yeah,
Okay,
so there's
so-
another,
Yep, got it.
yeah, thank you. So given the 2 zones that shelters are currently allowed in, if we were to keep the buffers as they're shown here, it would basically limit where we could place a shelter in 2 very, very small slivers of I believe it's NCB. So I'm just concerned with some of those buffers being very strict. I also don't really see a reason for a buffer around a park. I understand the concern of children having a place to play, but parks are also for adults to hang out in. I do like there's one in here, I think it's number 6, public transportation. I think that's a good idea to have shelters located within a short distance of public transportation. Even better would be for them to be walking distance to all the services that may be needed. And I think that's, what do I have here? Oh, I also had a question on number 2 there, the hours of operation. Would there be any consideration for a shelter that's not open 24/7 that may have, I know we currently have shelters that are open overnight and then they close during the day, but I wonder if if there could be some opening there for a shelter that's open most of the day, and if they needed to close for a small period of time, I think that they'd still be addressing a need. They wouldn't be open 24/7, but could still provide a useful service. And that's all I've got for now. Thanks.
Just to, while that map is up, just to put it in perspective, if you can see those black outlined areas, those are the zoning districts where shelters are currently allowed right now. And if you see anything in color on here, there's a buffer, it's not happening.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I would have to agree on some of that in respect to the buffers. I found it a little concerning, and I thought maybe there could be some language around specifically, because if we're looking at possible different types of shelters, which was a recommendation in the report, that we make sure that we're not having a buffer around a playground or something to that effect where students or kids. I think that's really important. So I'd like that to be looked at a little bit more. When it comes to the background checks, I think I would like to have the committee take a closer look at that. I know that some of the greatest work done in this community are by people that were former homeless and may not have, unfortunately, the background that might not pass a background check. And there's some of the greatest workers in this community with the homeless. So I just would like that to be looked at a little bit closer on that language. And also on the Main State Housing on page 5, where it says any homeless shelters shall participate in main housing monitoring. Do we know if any of our existing shelters have to deal with that, or would that be specific to a shelter that was getting maybe some of that home funding or CDBG, or if it's a privately funded, do they still have to do that? I think we need a little more clarity around that. And on the zoning, I think that we should have the planning board look at this right away. We've already had a discussion. We had a joint meeting last week when we were looking at some zoning changes. And I think that we're going to need to look at some possible zoning changes to make sure. One of the biggest things that I heard through all this conversation was location, location, location. If we're going to have conversation around location, we're going to have to open up that conversation around zoning, in my opinion. That's all I have for now, and thank you for all of this work.
Councillor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Hediger, on page 4, section G, it says, I just think it's typo more than anything else. Shall submit at least 90, and then in parentheses it says 60 days. So is it 60 or 90? Just got to clarify that. And as far as the zoning changes, I recommend that we do not make any zoning changes right now, just so that we can end this moratorium and move it forward, and then look at it at a later date. If we start going to the planning board, I'm more concerned that this is going to get us past that timeline. And that's my major concern, just so we can get this done before the moratorium's done. I really like the good neighbor policy that the committee started talking about, and like to incorporate it. I'd also like to add some kind of language in there that anybody can remove a guest at any time for any reason. And this would be staff or somebody that's in the shelter. So this will, for disruptive behavior or illegal behavior or anything like that, this will alleviate any concerns from like Pine Tree Legal or somebody else coming in and trying to make some kind of a claim. If it's in the ordinance that the staff at the whatever shelter it is has the right to remove or have a guest removed at any time. I think we definitely should look at the zoning, but the total bed count, I'm a little perplexed at that, and using the numbers that the Shelter Committee used. If we do that number just for the city of Lewiston, we bring that figure down from 107,000 to 40,000 people. And at 40,000 people, using that same math, we're right about where we should be for Lewiston residents, for shelters. They were looking at the numbers for Androscoggin County, so I think that the city of Lewiston should be determining what the city of Lewiston wants to embark on and take on for shelter for bed count. So I'm definitely a proponent of looking at the bed count. And last but not least, with the zero tolerance, the good neighbor, looking at a zero tolerance, I think something should be in there, and I know they have said that this is not acceptable, but it should be in the ordinance that there are no drugs, alcohol, pets, weapons, illegal activity, or something to that effect. When you have a large group of people in a very confined area, it's difficult at times to monitor what's going on if you're having private rooms. I'm not a proponent of private rooms, but this is a shelter, and if they want to build it, they have the right to build it. But we should just clarify that type of activity, which listening to the Shelter Committee saying that's not acceptable under the good neighbor policy, but I think that that verbiage should be in there when moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
At this point, Council, we are running into our business meeting, and I was just conferring with our administrator. This is scheduled for a workshop on the 16th.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And so would it be appropriate at that point to just basically continue this conversation the 16th, or we would have liked to have been further along by the 16th?
What I would recommend, if any feedback that has not been conveyed, either on the ordinance or on the report, get emailed out. Make sure you copy the entire elected official group. I can make sure I share it with the ad hoc committee co-chairs. And then I think at the next step would be to, particularly the report, if they could even track changes so we can see, where things have changed from this revision. Dave can do the same thing for the ordinance, and look at kind of narrowing down and bringing those more in alignment based upon the feedback, and then kind of getting a sound bite at that point, because at that point we need to start, I think it's the next week or the week after, we would place the legal ad. So we need to kind of know what's going to be in the legal ad at that point.
Between now and the 16th, would it be possible to schedule another workshop?
That's up to the council.
Okay. We will, I guess, thoughts from the council at this point? Councilor
Mr. Mayor,
LaChapelle?
if we're not going in front of the planning department, so the 16th would be solidifying more stuff. What does that give us? Work backwards from the deadline for the moratorium. How many meetings do we have before that deadline?
We were scheduled to have the legal ad placed at the end of August, the first reading on September 6th, the second reading on the 20th, with the expiration on the 25th.
So we have 2 meetings in August,
One,
1 meeting. Oh, we only meet once in August.
yes, unless we want to add one for this subject.
It would be my preference to add a workshop to further discuss this.
How large is the meeting in August traditionally? Is it going to be a packed meeting?
Let me see what the other workshop item is. The other thing that we could do is start the meeting at 5 or 5:30 that night.
5:30? Certainly. So I think we can come to the 16th, and then at the 16th, if we realize we just need more time, we can push it to the next week. Does that fall into a planning department? Does that fall in planning?
Well, we're running out of time, correct?
Next week, but we'd still be in that time frame.
Right.
So they could have a workshop. Like the last week of August?
Yes. So let's just see what we can accomplish on the 16th, and if we can't finish it, then move it on.
The clerk is telling me the legal ad needs to be placed on September 1st.
Yes.
So that would give us time on the 23rd if we needed a follow-up workshop.
Excellent. That'd be my suggestion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we can, we'll just table this conversation until the 16th, and then if we need further time, we can meet again on the 23rd.
Yes, but again, I would request that any kind of additional feedback be sent. We can make sure it's looped in with the group, and then we'll get the information back out to you as well. And at this point, we'll go ahead and start the meeting at 5:30 on the 16th to give you ample opportunity to cover this.
Correct. And if you don't have a packed agenda, we can go from 6 to 7:30 and start the council meeting at 7:30, or is that against the rules here?
Your
we would
business
normally like
rules
to
are
start at
in
7.
there at 7 o'clock. That's why I'm suggesting starting earlier.
2 o'clock in the afternoon is fine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Hediger.
Thank you.
Thank you, councilors. We're going to give ourselves a few minutes, and then we're going to get the meeting started. Thank you. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Lewiston City Council, and we're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we will have Tyler Levesque, an Eagle Scout, lead us. We have a few things we're going to start off the meeting with here. Do we have Director Welsh available?
Yes.
Oh, Director Welsh, if you could please join me at the front.
And also welcome Director Miriam Brenchman.
Absolutely. So July is National Parks and Rec Month, and I have a proclamation to read, but would either of you like to say anything beforehand?
Although separate in the city of Lewiston, Parks and Recreation are definitely like bread and butter in any municipality, especially during the COVID, those 2-year period where people were really yearning the community connection, outdoor adventures in their local parks, soccer programs, playground equipment. It definitely really heightened the need and want at the community for all of us to get together. Especially in Lewiston right now with the programs popping back up. We have new parks coming down the road, and we're just really excited to have the city's support in celebrating the National Recreation and Park Month.
And I just add that we're going to do a workshop on September 6th about the parks with a storyboard about just these amenities that we have and what the plan is of where we're headed to. So welcome anybody to that as well.
Thank you so much both for your service to our city. And now I have an official proclamation. Recognizing July 2022 as Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas Parks and Recreation are an integral part of communities throughout Lewiston and the nation, and whereas our parks and natural recreation areas showcase the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to enjoy the outdoors, and whereas Parks and Recreation are resources that assist with individual health and wellness, and whereas Parks and Recreation provide a way to connect with nature and are recognized as a positive amidst physical and mental health concerns, and whereas Parks and Recreation provide space for athletics, hiking, swimming, and many other active lifestyle activities, and whereas Parks and Recreation programming and activities to include youth sports and environmental education are beneficial to childhood development, and whereas Parks and Recreation add to a city's economic appeal toward continued growth, development, and vibrancy to include attracting families and businesses, and whereas the United States House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and the City of Lewiston recognizes the dedicated work that is done to keep Lewiston's parks and recreational areas in outstanding condition. I therefore, Carl Shaleen, Mayor of the City of Lewiston, do hereby officially recognize July 22 as Parks and Recreation Month here in Lewiston, Maine, and encourage residents to widely utilize our many parks and recreational offerings. Thank you. Tyler, if you can please join me up here. Joshua? No, Elijah and Chase. So you three are from Troop 116? Yep. And Nick, can you raise your hand? Nick is the Assistant Scoutmaster. And these 4 scouts have recently received their Eagle Scout distinction. And Tyler built 2 benches from Androscoggin Home Health Care and Hospice for employees and family members to relax when visiting in Lewiston. Josh, who's not here, but Josh sanded down and repainted the cannon and anchor in Veterans Memorial Park. Elijah sanded down and repainted the military Jeep in Veterans Memorial Park, along with placing hard doors on the Jeep so it will be better protected from the elements. And Chase built and stained picnic tables for Pettingill School Park. He also stained the information center at the park and created a map to identify trees in the park. These were their community service projects for their Eagle Scout, and I really appreciate you doing community service here in Lewiston. And we have presentation, or we have certificates for each of them mentioning their project. We'll give that to the Scoutmaster, and then Chase. Thank you. Thank you. And we will get a picture. Yeah, that'd be great. Nice.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Got it.
Dottie.
Hi, welcome this evening. My name is Dottie Parham-Whittier, and I'm the Community Relations Coordinator for Lewiston. And one of the favorite parts of my job, I'm also the advisor of the Lewiston Youth Advisory Council. And this year we had 10 seniors that graduated. We have a few here this evening. Many of them are at camps or at college orientations, but we do have a few that are here. And Linda, I was going to say, come on up. With me, obviously, we have the mayor, and we have our City Council liaison to the Youth Council, Linda Scott. So let me take these. Thank you, Kathy. All right, I'll just give you those. They're in order of when I say them. First of all, we have our outgoing chair, Riley Emmert, from going to Williams College. Right, you can stay up here because I know we're going to do a group photo. Then we have Kara Potvin, who's going to Hobart and William Smith colleges, and she was our vice chair. We have Bree Matthew going to Franklin Pierce. We have Emily Fournier going to USM. And I just wanted to mention the others. As I said, they're away at camps or vacations or whatnot, but we have Cadence Netto. Yes, she is. She is here. She's going to Husson. We thought she was working. We have Enzel Isaac, who's going to Bates. Abbas Shaddad, who's going to Central Maine. Nafissa Tasnia, who's at an orientation in Northeastern today. Omar Osman going to Bowdoin, and Shamarki Khalid, I do not have where he is going. But they are outgoing, and they have just been an amazing group of young people to work with. Such dedication.
We're going to get a photo
Yep.
really quickly.
Yep.
Council?
This way a little bit for the wants to slide around.
Brian, hang on just a second. And the sign, Heather? Take the sign down. Just move the whole table, Heather. Exactly.
All right, thank you.
And I did also want to mention that we're in the 21st year of the Youth Council. The Lewiston City Council established it in 2001 for young people to have a voice and to better their community. So I'm really proud that it's still going strong. There you go. There you go. I know we have, I think, everybody here tonight, with exception of a couple. Kimberly McLaughlin has a family commitment tonight, so she couldn't be here, and Annie Zao has driver's ed tonight. She said she has a 3-hour lecture she could not miss, so she's not here. So we'll call up just like we did the others, and the interviews with these folks were just incredible. It was Councilor Scott, the mayor, and I, and then the outgoing chair and vice chair, and it was just awesome to hear the things they had to say about their community. The first person is Aisha Abdasamad. Faisal Abdiraham. And then Hannah Arsenault is returning, but she's away at camp. Zara Bimbi. Cadence Gibson. Ava Golder. Destiny Graham. Ahmed Hussein. Sarah Mack. And then a returning, who's going to be a senior this year, Alyssa Netto. Samira Noor. Asley Osman. And Corinne Rosario. And I did want to also thank, I don't know if he's still here. Yes, Mr. Matthew, I forgot to mention with the outgoing group. That's Bree's dad back there by the door. And he's been a big help this year, so thank you so much. And I also wanted to mention Jeannie Raymond, who's the official grandmother of the Youth Council, who's here tonight. Want to do your photo? And this group is going to go across the hall afterwards. We're going to get your pictures for the website. This is our new group. Yep.
Congratulations, all of you.
Squish in with you. And I have to really squish, you guys.
Turn sideways so you can get in like this, yeah. There you go. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right.
That was it. Yes, sir. Yep, yep.
Now's your chance, guys.
Yeah, guys, if you don't want to stay.
Now's your chance.
Get while they're getting is good.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, it's over. Yeah.
Flies across. Whatever it takes.
Madam Clerk, we're ready to begin.
Yes, sir. Great. Thank you. All roll call votes for this meeting will begin with the Counselor of Ward 7.
May I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Clement, seconded by Councilor McCarthy. We have discussion.
Thank you.
Councilor Harriman.
Madam Clerk, did you receive my email about, I noticed on vote 226, 2022, it didn't list who moved and seconded the motion?
Yes, thank you, Counselor. So we will add that in. Counselor Harriman emailed, I think it was yesterday, to point out that one of the particular votes, I just forgot to put in who moved it and who seconded it. Counselor Harriman pointed that out. We verified it, and so we'll go ahead and incorporate that if that's okay with the council. Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We now have a public comment period is about to begin. Any member of the public may make comments regarding issues pertaining to Lewiston City Government. This period is reserved for non-agenda items. Public comment is also allowed during individual agenda items. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Please state your name for the record, and please indicate if you are a Lewiston resident. Because this is the business meeting of the City Council, all questions should be directed to the mayor, who will ask staff to follow up at a future time. It is illegal for the City Council to allow comments related to personnel matters. All personnel complaints should be made directly to the City Administration Office. And public comment is now open.
Jason Lavoie, I live at 242 Park Street in Lewiston. I just want to comment on the workshop that was just held, if it's appropriate. I want to personally thank the Shelter Committee. As a person who was opposed to the moratorium to begin with, I think both the ordinance and the report from the Shelter Committee is progress in addressing homelessness in our city. There isn't a night that goes by that I don't walk down Park Street or around Pine Street or by the Sun Journal building or by Trinity Church and see somebody sleeping out on the streets. And I fear for the winter. Summer is a hard time, having been homeless in Portland during the summertime. I think the biggest thing, when I was homeless in Portland, I had to carry my medications around with me because there was no 24-hour shelter available. I got kicked out during the day, and my medications got stolen from me, from people in the public. Now, we talk about the opioid crisis going on, and people that have to carry medications around, you're opening up a can of worms if there's not a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week shelter, because medications can easily be stolen, easily, if they don't have a place, a locker or a bedroom to lock them up in. I get very concerned about that with the medications on the street. The other thing I want to mention, I don't know if many of you know this, but it would be nice to see Lewiston recognize this. As a person that lives every day with a disability, July is Disability Pride Month, which is a time to recognize those that live with disability every day and contribute to our community. I think especially the people that are disabled that work in our community, that hold down jobs, who help our economy. I'm lucky because I'm disabled and I've managed to hold down several different jobs, including locally for the school department in the past. I just accepted a new job for a local employer, which I'm very proud to start soon. And I think recognizing our disabled population, I was disappointed that the city didn't do anything also to represent Mental Health Awareness Month. It just got overlooked, and I think that's too bad, to recognize our mental health workers and the disabled population and the people that work with our disabled. I think it's time the city recognize those people and have our own special either disability or Mental Health Awareness Month. Thank you.
Further public comment? Public comment is now closed. I was speaking with our administrator earlier, and we have some welcome news regarding property taxes. Minister Hunter, if you care to explain, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will add the assessors department completed all of their valuation work. The last piece of it is personal property, which they just wrapped up. They've gone through a conversion at this point in time. Now that all the numbers are solidified and reconciled, we had increase in total valuation for this fiscal year by $89.8 million. That's a 4.27% increase in valuation. I might add or remind the viewing audience and for you to take great pride, and we started a proposed budget at a tax rate of $32.35. We whittled it down to $29.41. With this change in valuation, we've reduced it further to $28.50. That is a 24-cent tax increase, or 0.84% over the previous year. I will also add that this tax rate is still below the tax rate dating back to FY19. So we are consistently showing that trajectory of reducing the tax rate. To Council 2 years ago recognized the COVID and the uncertainty associated with that, so taxes were reduced at that time. We had a valuation increase last year, so we were able to reduce it for the second year in a row. And this year we were able to mitigate the increase down to 24 cents. So again, things are happening. Opportunity does exist in Lewiston. And if I could, I also would like to take a moment to respond to the public comment period. Our DEI coordinator our director was on vacation, so she is working on doing work to recognize Disability Month and Mental Health Month, where we've sent information out. There's going to be posters within the workplace, as well as looking at lighting the clock tower. We're kind of working on that. It's a little bit tough when you have all the vacations this summer, particularly in Public Works, to get the tower changed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That is welcome news. Councilor Clement.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask the administrator perhaps to just outline some of the increase in valuation? I think there's one point that the council would like to recognize.
Yes, this is the second year in a row that the Clean Energy Corridor had a significant increase in valuation. Their total valuation increase was $31,400,000. We had several other smaller contributions to that. The Cancer Center had a $8.6 million increase in value. CMP and Unitel together had about $5 million. So clearly, on our side of the river, the utilities tend to be the valuation increases that we are capturing.
And I was also pleased to see that we have an increase in $5 million in residential new construction.
Correct.
Very nice. Thank you, Administrator.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, we have a consent agenda.
Yes, sir. We have 4 items on the consent agenda this evening. Item number 1, order authorizing execution of municipal quitclaim deeds for real estate located at 222 Russell Street, 253 Pine Woods Road, 48 Rachel Boulevard, 37 Jefferson Street, and 16 Ann Street. Number 2, authorization to accept transfer of forfeiture funds. Number 3, appointment to the Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Commission Board of Directors. And number 4, amendment to the traffic schedule regarding a change of parking regulations for a portion of Bates Street.
May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor LaChapelle. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Word 4?
Yes.
Word 5?
Yes.
Word 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Am I to understand that we're on item number 5 now?
Yes, sir. Item number 5, public hearing on a renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for Littlejoe's Bar and Grill, 740 Sabatta Street. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment to Littlejoe's Bar and Grill, 740 Sabatta Street.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor LaChapelle, second by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Word 1?
Yes.
Word 2?
Yes.
Word 3?
Yes.
Word 4?
Yes.
Word 5?
Yes.
Word 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 6.
Item number 6, public hearing and first passage regarding an amendment to the Buildings and Building Regulations Ordinance regarding the rental registration program. Requested action that the proposed amendment to the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 18, Buildings and Building Regulations, Article 6, Registration Requirement for Multifamily Buildings, Section 18-202, Applicability Exceptions, receive first passage by a roll call vote, and that the public hearing be continued to the next regularly scheduled City Council meeting.
I have a motion. Councilor Clement, followed by Councilor McCarthy. Discussion? Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do have a question on this in regards to when we talk about college dormitories. I understand that we're talking about dorms on the campus. What my question would be any housing that's owned by Bates College that has students in it, is that considered a dormitory? And is there going to be any look at the amount of students that would be occupying that residence? And my concern is that as a Ward 1 representative, the complaints I'm getting from neighbors is the amount of students in some of the off-campus housing. Some of it I understand is by landlords that are in the community or outside of the community, but I want to ensure that if there's going to be any housing that is even by Bates, that should be regulated and looked at as well, that we should know the number of students in there so that there's not over-occupation of buildings.
Sure. Thank you, Counselor. So you are correct in the sense that this would just be excluding from the filing of the paperwork regarding the rental registration buildings that are just deemed as dormitories that are located on college campuses. The properties that are off campus, regardless of who the ownership is, if they are multi-unit owners of 3 or more, they will be required to file in the system regardless of the owner of the property or the intent of the property. It's available. We just wanted to exclude the traditional large 4-story large brick dormitories from the filing because it's not available for real public rental. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion from the council? Public comment?
Jason Lavoie, 242 Park Street. Mr. Mayor, if I may inquire about a question on whether rooming houses or hotels are exempt from the rental registrations. It's just multi-unit properties, not rooming houses and not hotels. Is that correct?
I'm hearing that's correct, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I was just checking. Thank you.
Further public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk?
Counsel from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 7.
Item number 7, public hearing and first passage to amend the administrative ordinance regarding the committee structure of the Lewiston Public Art Committee. Requested action that the proposed amendments to the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 4, Boards, Commissions, Committees, and Bureaus, Division 4, Lewiston Public Art Committee, receive first passage by a roll call vote, and to continue the hearing to the next regularly scheduled City Council meeting.
Move for passage, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Clement, seconded by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify that I did call Councilor President Clement to ask for this to be put on. Originally, when we saw the ordinance, I had mentioned that I wanted to see a city councilor on this. I apologize for not using language that said an elected city councilor, and I wanted to ensure that that was where we were moving forward, which is why I asked for this to be on the agenda tonight so that we had that wordage in place. Thank you.
Councilor Scott? Councilor Harriman, my apologies.
Thank you. I just had a question about what duly elected means in this context and why it says duly elected and not just city councilor.
Councilor Scott?
Certainly. So my concern was that in the future, any mayor could say that they are part of the city council, and it would not be a city councilor. They could nominate themselves to be on the committee. And I had a concern about that because I wanted to ensure that it was a city councilor on the committee. And that's why I put that in there.
Thank you.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you for clarifying that. I'm just concerned that if it says duly elected, then that would mean that if there's a vacancy on the council and it's filled by an appointment, then an appointed city councilor would not be able to serve in this role, and we'd be creating different structures, different tiers of councilors with different responsibilities. I'm just concerned about that, both as far as fairness goes and for reducing confusion. I think we could probably strike the words duly elected, and it would have the same intent.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Clement.
I would offer a friendly amendment to this item, and instead of saying just duly elected, we could say duly elected or appointed city councilor.
I would be okay with that amendment.
I'm not sure who seconded.
Or perhaps,
They'd have to say it because they gave the motion. Yeah.
Okay, then,
or we could just say city councilor, and that would cover it.
Both.
Be simpler.
whatever.
City councilor. Sure.
I guess are you okay with that, or would you?
I'm okay with it as long as it specifies a city councilor. The original intent was it be a city councilor. There was some confusion as to who could be appointed, who is a member of the city council. You, for instance, are a member of the city council, but you are not a city councilor. You're not elected as a city councilor. You're elected as mayor. That's why a duly elected city councilor was the wording I chose. Makes no difference to me as long as it's a councilor. That's to eliminate the confusion as to who can be appointed. To Councilor Scott's point.
Yeah, no, I understand completely. I think just simply leaving it a counselor would just be simpler.
No problem with that whatsoever, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Strike those words, the two words duly elected, if you would, and we'll move forward with city councilor as opposed to member of the city council.
And I'm just looking, and Councilor Pease confirms with that as well as the maker of the second motion. Okay, thank you very much.
Further discussion from the council? Public comment on this agenda item? Back to the council? Councilor Jelinas?
So we're not voting on the language, we're just voting on the whole thing now. That was just a friendly thing.
Yes,
Friendly,
yes,
whatever.
correct.
Yeah, amendment, sorry.
Right.
Right, so it will read a city councilor.
Yeah, I got it, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
All set?
I think we're good.
Okay, Council.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Sorry, Councilor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 8.
Item number 8, resolve authorizing the acceptance and appropriation of a $50,000 grant and transfer of $137,550 for an outdoor fitness court as part of the 2022 National Fitness Campaign. Requested action to approve the resolve authorizing the acceptance and appropriation of a $50,000 grant and transfer $137,350 for an outdoor fitness court as part of the 2022 National Fitness Campaign.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor McCarthy? May I have a second?
I'll second for discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Clement has seconded it. Before we move to council discussion, Director Bruncheck, can you kick us off here?
Sure. This was a project that came to us late in the summer, in May, pretty much around the time when we started our tour with the city council. And we jumped on it to look at the opportunity of a $50,000 grant. Now, the National Fitness Campaign is a campaign across the U.S. And, Community Health Options is a partner with them. So they are located right here in Lewiston. They, approached us to see if we were interested in applying for this grant. 12 days later, we were accepted as a partner. So that's when we started to learn the criteria of what the selection of a site would be. So we were awarded as a partner. We haven't accepted this award yet. That's part of tonight. But we looked at the criteria and kind of an introductory call after that, because it's a different kind of grant. They don't just give you the money and you leave. They actually help you do the site selection, they help you with marketing and the launch and the planning. So it's really collaborative effort, which is wonderful. You don't usually see that in a grant. The 3 criteria that we had to look for in finding the best site was visibility, centralization, and also accessibility and being near trails and other pedestrian facilities, you know, any kind of infrastructure that's pedestrian. So trails was a key piece to this. When we looked at possible locations that were pad-ready, because we want to get this in October, we looked at what was flat, what was available. Public process was another piece of this. So we looked at a few places, but really Samard Payne Park was the only one that really stood out to having the public process in place and having a pad-ready site that's ready to get put in. The location that we've selected is over a tank that the city had put in for a CSO tank, so it already has gravel on top. You can't build on top of it. We certainly want to be careful with anything along the riverfront that is buildable, so this is a not buildable spot. And the public process has been really clear. I looked at I didn't even realize Choice Neighborhood went all the way down to the river when we got into this, but that's a really big grant area. So the 400 people or so that participated in that, the top 3 things, because I'm going to put in that indoor rec space, was number 1. The second one was an outdoor gym, and the third one was a outdoor fountain and play area. So it has been on the top of the list for this area. So we're glad that it had that fit. And then when we introduced it to the national team, they were very excited about this location. We put in our paperwork. We're in, you know, this is the first milestone, is to get it adopted. And I know that there's been some conversation about other sites, so I did call the national support person that, you know, that we have been working with. And you can't change the selection of a site after it's already been approved, but you can apply for another grant. And just because we got this grant doesn't hold us back from getting a second grant. So $30,000 of that comes from the National Fitness, which he told us is no problem. We definitely would approve that. And the other $20,000 comes from the Community Health Options. And again, located in Lewiston. This is not a lot of communities putting these in yet. It's meant to be multiple locations if you find them successful. So the full $50,000 would probably be available, but he guaranteed the $30,000. So I did have a little conversation to kind of follow up some of the emails that we've seen, but we feel like this is the best location for it. For the first one, to take a look at it, to see how it holds up, to have the most use, and then we can follow up from there. And the accounts that we're transferring from, we know the public restroom was not approved. And for Alfred Ployd Parkway, that's the rec conversion that had too many issues with wetlands that we couldn't even create a trail. So we need to do a rec conversion within a conversion, which again will be discussed in the September 6th workshop. So that project is kind of dead in the water, so to speak. So that leftover funds is the other, funding that we're looking at transferring over if you approve this project.
Thank you, Director. Discussion from the council? Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to be clear, Director Brunchick, what I hear you saying is that one of the stipulations of this grant from the national group is that it actually be installed at Samard Payne. In other words, that's not up for debate, that's not up for discussion, that's a done deal. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, you are correct, and I confirmed that today, but they also said you can apply for another one at any time.
That's awesome. When I looked at the outdoor fitness court additional expenses, you know, that we would transfer if we voted on this tonight, I wondered, like, if we have an idea of what would it also cost to have security, to have cameras, to have lighting, to have, because I mean, I can see what's broken out here for the items on the sheet that we have here.
Yeah.
Do we have an estimate of what those additional things would run and what possible timeline we'd be looking at for that?
Sure, we have an estimate for an additional water fountain to be put over there. We're looking at utilities going into the back end of the red shop. We have a line there.
Oh, yeah.
So we're similar. We're just installing one right over at Kennedy Park right now. So a bottle fill water station. The camera, we've already been looking at them for utilities, so we're looking at that going in at the pump station. And then additional lighting, we're talking to the owner of Hampton Inn. who owns all the lights back in that parking lot, to look at expanding lighting, and he's very excited about this project as well, Chris Thompson. So those pieces altogether for our side of it is less than 5,000.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just, again, some clarity. So when you say that Samard Payne Park has to be the one that's used, that was because you had already chosen the site, and the city had already chosen the site, and that's what you reported to them. That's why that has to be used. Am I understanding that correctly?
Is that out of the 3 that we looked at, only 1 qualified because of the public process and being along a walking trail?
So I guess I would,
Those two
again, need
other
clarity on
components.
the public process. So when we talk about the public process, we did not have an open public discussion. We looked at the choice neighborhood process and what happened in that process.
Right,
When
correct.
that grant, when we
Correct.
talked about that, the choice neighborhood book is what you're talking about.
Correct. It's on page 25, specifically called out.
So I will be honest with you, because I did look at Pettingill Park. I was reached out to. It wasn't just the person that had been so vocally public about it either this weekend. I was reached out by other people. I live close to Pettingill Park. I actually reached out to Councilor McCarthy, and we both went there Sunday evening to take a look at it. There was a lot of positive response from the people in the neighborhood of Pettingill Park. I just want to put that out there publicly. I also want to put out that I would be in favor of a public process that actually had the whole community as part of the process. I really think that that's important, especially a piece of equipment like this where we're going to have, we want the whole public to be using it. I will also state that I have some serious concerns when I read this in respect to, I honestly have to, I'm going to be very frank here. I think we're putting the cart before the horse by putting the equipment there before we have a full infrastructure in place for a park that's used by families and the community. Samard Payne Park is used a lot by events. It's used by people that have protests. It's used by the Balloon Festival. It's used by a lot of big events and brings a lot of people there. But when we look at a Sunnyside Park, a Pettingill Park, a Mark Parody Park, those are parks that have playgrounds already existing. We have parents that go there with their kids, would be working out, do work out there while their kids are playing on the playground, have visual sight of their children while they're doing those workouts. That, in my opinion, is not available at Samard Payne Park. I understand the conversation, and I've seen the emails around economic development and bringing that down there, and I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, when we have a guarantee of $30,000, we still are not sure about the $20,000, and $5,000 you say for the lights, but we don't have the stuff in place. I have serious concerns. I don't personally feel that that is in a visible spot behind the pump house in the parking lot at the entrance of Samard Payne Park versus inside the park itself. So I'm just letting my opinion be known that I do have some concerns, and I would hope that when we do something like this in the future, we look at other areas outside of the downtown. The downtown needs a tremendous amount of work, but a lot of comments that I have received have been from people that said it would be nice if we got a grant or some new equipment in some of the other parks outside of the downtown. And I think that's a point that needs to be made. I'm speaking for my constituents. And I think we need to remember that when we're looking at all of this stuff. Thank you.
Councillor Harriman.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, when you mentioned that the 30,000 was guaranteed and the 20,000 was not necessarily, that would be if we applied for a second one?
Right, for a second grant.
So
because-
this 50,000 is there?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's
Okay.
already.
And then I had another question. I was concerned about the transfer of the money out of the public bathroom account. So is that project, is that just dead for now? Or I thought we were going to try to look for other options as far as that goes.
At this point, the council received information, and there was no direction elsewhere. We do have one opportunity that we are looking at. There are still funds available in that project. It's just on a smaller scale because we were not going to make that investment based upon the council's feedback at that time.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I know that's, because that's about 80% of that fund that will
Correct.
be taken out, leaving not much left. I mean, I understand the need. I think this is a great idea, this fitness park. I'm also concerned, though, about just scrapping the public bathroom proposal. I think that's a much more desperate need for the community. So that's just my concern about taking that money out of that account.
Councilor McCarthy.
I have to echo Councilor Scott's opinion on all of this. One of the things that I heard as I knocked on over 500 doors running for the city council last year was overwhelming. It seems like it's the forgotten majority, that the city doesn't invest any money into those areas. I know when Pettingill Park was created, I came to 2 of the council meetings and had some heated discussions with the city council over even creating that park. Mm-hmm. They were going to put 10 housing units on it, and they were bound and determined that they were going to do it. And it took a lot of the community coming forward to even allow them to not do that. And what we got was they leveled it and they mow it, and that's about it. Everything else has been done by the wonderful committee, Friends of Pettingill Park, and a lot of donations from a lot of people. And I think this would have been a perfect addition to that park. Visibility is right there. The chances of it being vandalized is extremely low because of it's a neighborhood. It's a well patrolled neighborhood from the police standpoint. It's a well-used park. And the idea that parents could take their kids to the park, and instead of just sitting on the park bench waiting for the kids to tire themselves out, they could do a little recreation and get a little healthier. So I'm very disappointed that we didn't even have the opportunity. If Pettingill Park was even being considered, I think Councilor Scott and I at least should have been involved in the conversation. So I'm very disappointed about that. I have extreme reservations about where it wants to be put. I think it'll be a target for vandalism. I'm concerned about spending $137,000 of city money and have it not be any good in a couple of years. One of the other things that was mentioned, that this would be the first one and we'll see how it goes and go from there. Well, if it fails, then we won't get one at Pettingill Park. So I'm deeply concerned about that. I think that that part of the park, that pathway is, aside from large events, is barely used. I know in the future they want to connect that. There's a lot of plans in the future, but right now I think that this is too early. I walked the park for 2 years. I walked the park every day at lunch. That was my 3.5-mile lunch. And there's some people that use it, but not the thousands of people that some people have led us to believe use Samad Payne Park on a regular basis. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think the location is right at this point in time, and I think it will ultimately fail. And I think that I'm just disappointed all the way around. Thank you.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is the process? Can we apply for that for Pettingill Park right now?
You could apply again, yes. But you have to start from scratch, so to be installed next year. So it would be next year's capital money, what would be transferring. So this year, we're looking at an October deadline, and this is the path that we need to follow to keep on that deadline. We'd start from scratch, in other words. We'd start with a new application, we'd start with a new site selection discussion, but it also fails to meet the criteria of one of the 3 basic pieces, not only public processes, that's a given, is that it doesn't connect to a trail. So it needs to be connected to a trail, and I had asked and hadn't really looked in detail for us to apply for this. We'd need to look at even the sidewalk connections, where is it leading to? Is there any missing gaps? Do we need to fill in some gaps? Where it's not an established trail system, And I know, I just learned of that agreement in 2015 that was made with Pentonville Park. I thought that was ours and our responsibility, but it actually hasn't had capital put into it, and any amenities is the responsibility in this agreement as part of that Friends of Pentonville Park. I wasn't even clear about all of that, but I do have a copy of it. It's dated in 2015 and hasn't been updated since that time.
And just so everybody knows, I'm the treasurer of the Friends of Pentonville Park.
And Megan Bates, my deputy, is at those meetings. They're every 3 or 4 months. So we've had a good working relationship, but I didn't realize that we were just doing the maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that you can go to Pentonville Park any time of day, any day, and you'll find it's clean. It's well-maintained, and the people around there look after it. The other thing, as far as a trail, well, maybe not a technical trail, but talk to all the Bates students, and they'll tell you how far they can run and what they can do there. So no different than anybody else can do it. So I defer that a trail is not the thing that's making it work.
It's just the criteria of the grant. That's all. We want it to be successful, so we want to create that it's linking to something.
Thank you, Director Bruncheck. Yeah, so with all due respect to my fellow, or to my counselors here, so I think Pentonville Park presents a number of issues. I think the park is already like fairly small, and it's, what is the size of this pad? Is it 38 by 38?
38 by 38.
Yeah, so we're just not talking about putting in some monkey bars or something. This will take a significant amount of space. And I think there's some confusion about how busy Samar Payne actually is. Well, we saw an email from Jocelyn Jean, who serves on the planning board, that Samar Payne Park is a fairly busy park in town, if not the busiest. And I am down there quite a bit since it's in close proximity. And it is busy, and there are families down there. There are people playing soccer. There's people running. I meet Auburn residents who bring their dogs over, and kids are flying their kite. And this park gets quite a bit of use. I mean, certainly it's the best riverfront park in Maine. So yes, we're going to have huge events there, and there have been the balloon festival's coming up. I hope to see you all there. But yeah, this is putting this at Samar Payne helps move city goals forward. You know, if we're talking about the riverfront master plan and in building up that area, this makes the most sense. Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out to folks in the neighborhood who might not be aware, there's also quite a similar facility. If you go to Bates College, between the tennis courts and the ice arena, they have a fitness park there. I don't know exactly how it compares, but it's a similar sort of facility, less than a 10-minute walk from Pentonville Park. So it seems to me that it would also be helpful to, to spread these sorts of things around the community so more people have access to them. Thank you.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question, I guess, to Director Bruncheck. I see under the itemized list here, a concrete slab for $20,000. In my neighborhood, they develop and they put slabs down for houses that are roughly the same size, maybe not square, and they certainly don't put $20,000 into them. Can we have an explanation of why the extreme cost?
We have an exact quote from St. Laurent right now that's $18,600 or something like that. That would eventually come to the Finance Committee if that is approved. So we already have an actual estimate on that.
Still seems rather high to me.
That's what it is.
Well,
that's a fresh bid.
That's a fresh bid. Approved.
Concrete, all of that stuff has gone up, but my bigger concern with this project was the delivery of the equipment, and they actually have that all American made. It's already done. It'll be delivered within 4 weeks. So I thought there would be a delivery problem with the equipment, and there isn't. It's already set aside.
Councilor McCarthy.
As far as trails go, there's plenty of sidewalks. If you ever drive down College Street any time of the day, you're going to see a constant flow of people on that sidewalk. Like Councilor Pease said, you had the Bates runners. That's just one small aspect of everything, but that is a central location to the residential neighborhoods. Samad Payne Park is not a central location to the rest of the city. I know I used to go to Samad Payne Park when I worked downtown, but I haven't been back since I've left downtown. And most people from my area, aside from big events, will not be going down to Samad Payne Park to use that exercise equipment. Whereas if it was right there and visible, not only would that equipment be used by the people that are already going there, it would draw more people there. So I think that that's one point that, to me, is a moot point. And then as far as the mayor's assertion that the park is too small, that's absolutely not true. Councilor Scott and myself and Officer Philippon, Officer Philippon had actually staked out a location. I guess it had been reviewed several weeks ago, and he showed us the park. It would rip up some tar that isn't used, and it would place it to the back of the park, away from the big field that is used for a lot of activities, and it would be a perfect fit right there. Someone was concerned about one of the comments I read about it blocking the view from Marble Street, but there's a probably 5-foot drop between Marble Street and there, so it would not block the view. Like I said, I'm disappointed in all of this. Thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm torn on this one, folks. First of all, trying not to grill you on this. You're doing a good job. This is not free money. Yeah, let's go for it. Grant money. Grant money is always good. I'm torn. I hear the sentiments from Ward 1 and Ward 2. I have said the same thing about Ward 4. We don't have any parks in Ward 4. We have a lot of trees around our houses, but there are no amenities out in our area either. One might say we can go to McMahon School or drive over to there. This has been not my complaint, one of my conversations since becoming a counselor is how many parks that we have. I am parked out in this place, and I've asked a couple times how many parks we have and how much money we spend on each of these parks. And I think it's time that we do a complete review of our parks within our city and start focusing on where do we want to focus our attention on. And I'm not taking away the importance of the master plan down on the riverfront. I have used a jogging area. It doesn't look like I jog, but I used to jog. I have used those facilities, and I have worked out on something similar along a waterfront or on a boardwalk or something like that. It is nice. We're looking at a budget that, granted, we've been blessed that it's only going up 24 cents, but we're looking at other issues that are coming in front of the city of spending another $135,000 or $200,000, and then we're going to talk about another park at Pettingill, and now I'm going to get upset because I want one in my ward in Ward 4, and Stephanie's saying, well, what happened to 7 or 6? And
I don't have
She's
one.
getting
You don't have one. Okay, so Lee doesn't have one. So I think we need a complete review, and I just have a hard time spending this kind of money on it. I'm torn. I'm really torn. I've been saying it right from the start. Parks. We're spending a lot of money on parks. We spend a lot of money on libraries. We spend a lot of money on this. So even though thank you for the 50,000, this is the first one that they've given out.
This is the very first one in the state.
So it'll be around next year if we decide to just hold back. And
There is Augusta that's putting theirs in right at the same time. So yes, there is funds available. Their goal is to do 400 across America, I believe, 100 in the state of Maine. It's just somebody needs to be a leader. Someone needs to be a leader, and that's where I would like us to be.
I'm trying to be a leader also and saying we got a lot of money into parks, folks.
Yeah.
And
This is a really low maintenance park too. I mean, I know that there's concerns, and I look at the concerns with Pettingill Park. That's kind of a good model where they're paying for those amenities, that they're paying for those capital. Maybe those partnerships will grow. But that's
Correct.
not
I'm
even
not
apples
taking
and
away
apples.
the value of that at all. I'm just looking at dollars and cents right now. Thank you.
I'd just like to chime in again. So while I understand that Pettingill Park is in the middle of a neighborhood, it is probably very likely that within a 10-minute walk, more people live within a 10-minute walk to the Samard Payne location than do Pettingill Park. A lot of people live on Lisbon Street now, and you have the St. Marie Apartments, and so on and so forth. It is likely closer. I realize no house abuts this location, Samard Payne Park, but within a 10-minute walk, it is highly likely that more people live closer. Councilor Harriman.
Yeah, just to add to that, there's also the Little Canada neighborhood is pretty close there, and there's development happening at the Continental Mill. I think you mentioned the Sainte Marie Apartments. The Dominican block is being redeveloped. So there is, to the same point, there are a lot of people living within a radius of this park, not necessarily abutting it. There's just a lot more concentration of housing downtown.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So first off, I just want to say, Director Brencheck, I really appreciate the work you're doing. I'm not trying to give anybody a hard time here. I am speaking for my constituents. When we say a public process, I personally feel that a public process shouldn't be a process that was done a few years ago for a grant that we did for the Choice neighborhood. I think a public process, and this is my personal opinion, that it should be a public process in the whole community to have input on something like this. I'm going to respectfully disagree with the mayor that there is this, I personally do not believe that this is going to be the right spot for this, and we have these comments and stuff. I walk every day as much as many other people do. I am outside all the time. I generally go to all the parks on a regular basis, including Thorncraig, including Mark Parody Park. I go to all of them all the time with my family. You know, there was one comment made that, you know, the neighborhood around Pettingill Park is a more affluent neighborhood. I'll be frank with you. I live on Pettingill Street. I'm a renter. I don't own a home. I live on a fixed income and take care of a disabled husband. There are poor people in my neighborhood too, and I'm speaking for that. And I would prefer that we see a process that is something that we can all be part of that conversation. And because of that, and it's, again, no offense to the work that's been done, I will be voting no on this. I apologize, but that is where I stand at this point.
In terms of public process, Director Brencheck, so the Riverfront Island Master Plan had a public process, correct?
The Choice Neighborhoods Transformation Plan had a public process. We have not ever done a Parks Master Plan that would have that public process. In September, we're rolling out a storyboard that has a survey in the end, which will be the beginning of a public process, but not a full discussion. So we've never had a master plan for parks, so.
Well, I understand, but this is, you mentioned, maybe I misheard you, you mentioned at the beginning that an outdoor gym was called for the Riverfront Island Master Plan?
No, it was called for in the transformation plan. The boundaries for the Choice neighborhood goes right down to the riverfront.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion from the council, Councilor Clement.
A couple of questions, Mr. Mayor. I would assume that this is going to have to go out to bid for some of these things?
You'd get a package on Monday that would be for sole source for this in the assembly. This is trademarked by National Fitness Campaign. There's no one else that makes this unit. In the assembly of it as well.
You'll be asking for sole source from the Finance Committee?
Yeah, we're just drafting that tonight, just in case.
I sincerely, I see some problems with the cost of some of these items here. I'm not sure which way I'm going to turn on it. I think it's somewhat inflated. I love the idea of doing something Samard Payne. I'll be happy when we can return the park to its namesake, get the monument back down there. This is something we've talked about for 3 years. It has not come to fruition yet. I understand the pandemic and all that. We definitely need to get something going down there. It's a great area. The Riverfront Island great opportunities. I have a little heartburn here. Quite frankly, I do. $20,000 slab. I mean, you got an $18,000 quote. I think I could probably go out and get your quote for much less than that. But I have no idea what that slab consists of. You know, is it 26 inches thick? Is it wire reinforced? Is it 8,000 PSI? I don't know. But 20,000 for a 38 by 38, I'm sure if the developer in my neighborhood were charging that for a home slab, that and the cost of building materials, the cost of houses would have gone up again tremendously. Just because we are the city and people look upon us as having deep pockets doesn't mean we have to agree with everything, unfortunately. I don't know that there's enough indecision here. If the council feels that they want to put this off for a month and think it over, I think we have that time from what I've heard, do we? Put this off to our August meeting?
From the timetable that,
We just wouldn't be able to install it for October. We'd have to
right,
install it in the spring.
that was the kicker, is we had this mapped out to be, if we were going to install before winter this year, this is the meeting the decision would need to be made by. If we delay it, obviously, we can delay it until the spring. And we'd have to go back to the company in the grant awarder to let them know that the timeline is changing.
If we were to decide at our August meeting, the middle of August, this could not be accomplished in October, by October.
It's my understanding that some of the materials need to be installed before it freezes, or the potential for freeze.
True, I would think that, I mean, we build bridges in January in the state of Maine, so.
At a much higher cost than in the summer.
Well, I don't know, maybe we could do it for less if this guy would, I don't know. It's just that I have a problem with the total cost. We're gonna be looking at $142,000 total if we put the amenities in here. The way it was packaged for us indicated future costs, I believe, is,
Amber and security and the water fountain, which is an
yeah,
extra.
you said 5,000 additional on that.
Extra amenity.
And so that's gonna put it up around 142,000. So, a lot of money. That's all I've got, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further discussion from the council? I'm going to public comment for this agenda item.
Jason Lavoie, 242 Park Street. Like a lot of you city councilors, this is a hard one. First of all, as far as the location goes, I live downtown, and yes, I might use it. Maybe I could use a little bit of working out. As far as location goes, I don't think there's a sticking point there in this. I actually agree. I don't often agree with Councilor Clement on a lot of issues, but in this case, I would agree with him. Spending this much money without taking a little break and seeing what needs to be done, I think is I think you need to give some time. Plus, we're looking at October of installing it. Is it gonna be used over the winter? Really? I mean, do we really need to could we put it in for next summer where it can be used more often and see how it goes? I have my concerns. Like, I want to see more recreation in the downtown, but I also don't want to see this set up for failure. I want to see it set up for success. And I have to agree. I've never been to Pettingill Park, so I can't take a position on that's where it needs to go. But I've been to some Art Payne Park, and I'm just concerned. I'm also concerned about vandalism. I'm really concerned about that, because it seems like every time we put in something good, somebody bad has to step up. I remember the bus station having bathrooms that have been locked, and I'll address that later on, but have been locked since 2020 because people went in and vandalized them. And I'm concerned about vandalism, and I know a camera can't always solve vandalism. I mean, you can catch the person all you want, but a camera is not going to. So I have my concerns. I think taking a step backwards and tabling this and giving you guys some time to work out some of the kinks if you can. If you can't, maybe holding off is a good idea. I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm all for recreation and outdoor recreation, whatever we can do. But I think taking a little break and reevaluating this, maybe having a better process might work. But that's just my view, and, you know, I just think you're making an investment that's important in recreation, and I think you need to think about where the investment you make. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Margaret Craven, and I live at 41 Russell Street. And I actually serve as one on the Friends of Pettingill board. And so, thank you for all of your thoughtful conversation about the entire project. But I've been working out all my life, and I feel like it's very important to install in our community opportunities for people to stay healthy. Number one, it reduces healthcare costs, and if adults are working out, it's a model for children. And I'm not jealous, really, because it's not going into Pettingill School Park in the beginning, because I could, because we've made big installments, money-wise, time-wise, emotion-wise, to make sure that that park is built and kept up and, you know, cared for constantly, and we're very proud of it. But whether the project goes into Smain, Payne, or Pettingill, I would actually really, really encourage you to accept the grant and to put us on the map as being the first in installing a public, a public workout station that I think would be very useful to the community. Thanks.
Further public comment? Back to the council for discussion. Councilor Jalanis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just really want to, validate, hearing concerns have been expressed for sure. But I guess I go back to, this isn't really about whether it should be at Samard or Pettingill Park, because that's not even on the table. I mean, certainly what's on the table is the opportunity for us in the future to look at writing another grant and doing another park, following a public process and all that. But for me, what's on the table right now is, do we want to do this park? Do we want to do this development in Samard Payne? My point of view, I think I'm the minority here, but I think Samard Payne is one of our gems. It really is. It's a beautiful, beautiful park. And I run there. I think it's a great park. I spend a lot of time there. I think it's a great spot. I will agree that sometimes it's not as used as it should be, but if you want people to use it, we need to make it, we need to develop it, we need to make the people want to go. And I think this is a nice, small step. The only ache I'm having about all this is knowing that the monies are coming from, or being transferred potentially from the portable toilet thing. But, it sounds like Administrator Hunter has some thoughts up her sleeve, some ideas, and that's great. We can look to that later. But other than that, it's like, this is money that's sitting there that we could transfer for this. This is a great opportunity. I would concur with, Ms. Craven. I think that, exercise and giving opportunity to everybody in our community to exercise is important. So I'm actually going to support this tonight. I do appreciate the work that you've done. I know there's been a lot and you've been grilled, but I do appreciate everything that you brought forward.
Further discussion from the council? Councilor Pease.
Director Benishak, do we have any idea what the cost of maintaining it is going to be?
There's actually only the vandalism and graffiti. If we have to remove it, that's it. There's no other piece that we do. We use a leaf blower to blow it off. It's the least amount of effort from our staff than any other parks. I mean, it's a similar rubber like that we have at St. Jude's Park, or not St. Jude, but I added a saint to that. But Jude's Place has the rubber ground. So that's what it has on it. So we use a leaf blower on that. You can repair a square, which is better than the design we had at Jude's Park. So the maintenance is very little. And,
Okay.
I've heard those concerns earlier. So certainly more we'll talk about in the September workshop. But the other opportunity, I guess, is if the location is it, as long as it's within Samard Payne Park, that application still is good. So if we look at finding a different location that feel might be better for less vandalism opportunity, it was, can be part of the Riverfront Master Plan update charrettes that we're holding. As long as we hold the location, the installation in the spring, the application still holds true. So there's opportunity to do that.
Okay, thank you.
If I can bring Chief St. Pierre to the podium here. So, we keep talking about vandalism and that it's just like right around the corner or happening tonight as we're here. But what is the current state of vandalism in our parks, Chief? If you could just speak to that.
It varies greatly. I can tell you that there is a lot of vandalism that happens right here at Kennedy Park. Our gazebo is completely destroyed right now, in my opinion. People are carving their name in it. They're writing with markers, despite the regular efforts of our patrol officers to monitor it. They're through that park 100 times a day. That's probably the worst one, and yet it's right outside of our police department and outside our city hall. In regards to Samard Payne Park, we did have some vandalism, which led to really, that's why the removal of our statue that was down there, and it hasn't been replaced yet. I think Pettingill Park has been fine. It does happen from time to time. I haven't seen any at Jude's Park in quite some time, but it's rather random all over.
Thank you. Further discussion from the council? Councilor Scott?
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask a question of Chief St. Pierre?
Yeah, sure.
Actually, it may be Assistant, maybe Mr. O'Malley instead. But when Jude's playground was put into place and all that equipment was put in there, I recall being on the school committee and there was a lot of vandalism. There were vulgar things drawn on the seats of the swing set. There was all sorts of vandalism done there. I believe it was done more than once. So I don't want to have this image that this does not happen. I don't want to make it a derogatory thing, but it's a reality. It does happen, and it happened with that equipment and all the work that went in there. I was a big part of that park and getting that taken care of, and it was vandalized. And a couple of times, and I think until they put the fence around it, that there was an issue more, but they have the fencing around it now, and it's made it a little bit different. And I also think that with the addition of the school fields and stuff like that, it's a lot more visible with activities happening, so that may have curtailed some of the vandalism. But that park was extremely vandalized, if I recall correctly, when that was first put into place.
Yeah, I will agree, Councilor Scott. In my time when I was the police chief, throughout the city, and I think even in your ward, you'll often see graffiti. There'll be 2 or 3 individuals who will tag the city throughout. I mean, it'll be on the whole Holland Knight building. If you go on the walkway behind Sunnyside Park, there were things sprayed all over the ground. We went for a couple months where we were having a lot of graffiti. Jude's Place has, in the past, been a target of vandalism. People being too big and trying to break some of the swings and the rides. But a lot of the time, the graffiti, when we talk about this, is graffiti that is sprayed on that. And that happens at Pettingill. I'm sure Margaret could probably attest to that they've had to clean up graffiti, or Public Works has gone to a system. It happens at all the parks throughout the city. I mean, sometimes we go in spurts when we come to the graffiti being sprayed on buildings, parks, walkways, bridges, the foot trestle going in between Lewis and Auburn. That was a constant thing 2 years ago, where they were constantly going out there, Public Works, with gray paint to cover that graffiti.
Thank you. And I just want to put that out there again. I am not negative about any of this stuff. I think having these things are a great thing to have in our community. I want to see them developed, but I also want to ensure that we have a public process in place and that we are having a full conversation around this on different locations and where things can be located. And I would also state that, when we talk about the choice neighborhood and where this could possibly be, and a neighborhood that may use it, I probably would have been a lot more support if this would have been put into a Mark Parody Park, where I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the people around there are going to be using it. I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neighborhood's going to be using it, and I know that the neigh this is all playing a big part of it, and I understand what Representative Craven said. I don't disagree with you. I think it's important to take a piece when we get a grant and we have it, but I've been a part of many grant processes in this community, and sometimes we get grants, we do these things, and then nothing else happens after the end, and I'm really concerned about this. I want to see Samard Payne Park move forward, but I want to see it move forward in a positive way. I agree it is one of the best parks that we have in our community, but I have very much concern about where this is going to be located, and again, I will reiterate, unfortunately, I'm going to be voting no. Thank you.
Deputy Administrator, do you have something to add?
If I could just address one more issue. The reason that this grant was the contingency upon being along a trail. And we actually, Councilor Scott, the first discussion we had was Sunnyside Park. So I had Public Works at that location. We just don't have the space for it. Our thoughts were, and I know you're very familiar with the park, when you go into Sunnyside, off to the left side there, we were thinking maybe we could get something over there, but we'd have to purchase land to do that. So we couldn't do that. We were very cognizant of the fact of trying to get something along the trail in a different part of the city. However, based on the requirements of this grant, we had to be along the walk or the river trail. So we first looked at Sunnyside Park. We had some conversations with the folks from Pettingill, and that's when we settled on Samard Payne, based more on the criteria of this grant requirement. And we did have discussions with you folks about the plans of extending it, the walkway through under the Main Street going to Veterans Park, heading over to Continental Mill, with the hopes of those apartments at Continental Mill. That would be an attraction to get folks and younger people upward mobile to move into those apartments. They'll have the trail, they'll have the exercise areas, and that was the beginning step of that process. But really, it was based on what do we have for a walking trail, and that's why there's two places we really looked at was Sunnyside Park and Samard Payne.
Thank you, Deputy Administrator. And, if I could just add to the council here. So when we put, Riverside, I'm sorry, so many parks, and we do not have too many, thank you. But Samard Payne Park, it is the gem of our community, and any investment that we make in it will definitely further economic development and our community goals. Further discussion from the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
No.
Ward 2?
No.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 5-2.
Agenda item number 9.
Item number 9, order authorizing the acceptance of Matobian Avenue Phase 3 as a public street, part of the L&L Estate subdivision. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the acceptance of Matobian Avenue Phase 3 as a public street and direct the city administrator to execute or accept all documents to complete the transfer of the property to the city.
So moved.
Now, Councilor Clement, followed by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Public comment for this agenda item? Or did you want to say anything, Director Brenchick?
This is just an extension, a new extension to this development that's all been underway. It has a T intersection at the end where you will be seeing in future packets that every time that it ended, it had a little turnaround for the plows. So accepting the street has been a process now. I have no problem accepting the next 400 feet. And then at the next meeting, you'll see that those previous T sections for Phase 1 and 2 will be deeded back to the property owners. So we're trying to clean that up as we go. But it's increased housing in our area, and the street was built to standards that match the street standards that we require.
Excellent. Any public comment? Back to the council. Councilor LaChapelle.
I'm sure everybody has read their information packet. For information for the people at home, I am one of the L's in L&L Estates. Mr. LeBlanc is in the back of the room. That is our property, that is our development that we've been working on for the last 10 years and continue to expand. I won't be voting on this tonight, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that, yes, I am involved in this. And I think it is a fine development.
I'm excited about residential development in the city, and I thank you for your investment in our city, both of you. Thank you. Further discussion from the council? Madam Clerk, just for a point of clarification, so if a councilor abstains, I still do not vote, is that correct? They need to, in fact, be absent?
I believe, oh, that is a good question, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm looking forward to voting for this, but while she's checking on that, Councilor Clement?
An abstention, he would not vote. A recusal for reason of conflict of interest, you would vote. So it makes a difference as to whether he recuses himself or abstains when the vote comes.
We're confirming that at this moment.
Given the conflict, I would think you would want to recuse yourself, Counselor. Thank you.
I don't see any conflict.
Shady developer.
Councilors, please.
We can just save time. Madam Clerk, we can save time. I'll just recuse myself at this point.
And yes, just to confirm, Councilor Clement is correct. The language is to recuse. So yes, so just for everyone's knowledge, the language in the charter says the mayor shall be the presiding officer of the council and shall be entitled to vote only to break a tie when a council vacancy exists in the absence of a councilor or when a councilor has been recused due to a conflict of interest, which would be the latter for Councilor LaChapelle. So the mayor is entitled to vote on this question if he so chooses.
Thank you. Further discussion? Madam Clerk, we've already been to public comment, correct?
Yes, sir, we have.
Further discussion from the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward.
Please don't skip me.
Oh, okay. Counselor from Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4. I'm sorry. Ward 5.
Yes.
Word 6?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 10.
Item number 10, order directing administration to negotiate additional FY23 COLA increases for active collective bargaining agreements, full-time non-union personnel, and adjust the entry-level pay steps of the police patrol wage scale. Requested action to approve the order directing administration to negotiate additional fiscal year 23 COLA increases for active collective bargaining agreements, full-time non-union personnel, and adjust the entry-level pay steps of the police patrol wage scale.
So moved.
Councilor LaChapelle, followed by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Councilor LaChapelle?
We had discussed some dollar amounts, and I am going to vote in favor of this, but I'm actually not in favor of it. I believe this raise should be much higher than it is. I am totally amazed at our Lewiston Police Department. I've had, and over the last couple weeks, had the opportunity to deal with them directly in my line of business and watching their interaction with some very difficult people. And when I first started working on Lisbon Street almost 40 years ago, if somebody touched a police officer or even said something, they would be eating pavement, and they're down and they're out. And I'm watching these officers just stand there and take abuse like there's no tomorrow. I witnessed somebody push an officer this week, and he handled it masterfully. And diffused the situation and moved on. Just that skill set alone, we have to recognize, and what they put themselves in the line. I can't say enough about our police department. They've done a great job, and I want to be able to support them, protect them, and we live in a very tough society at this point, because we can no longer tell anybody no. You can't say no. You can't say no to a stop to a child in kindergarten or first grade. We can't say stop or no to an adult. we had our chief of police accosted in Shaw's supermarket with his wife trying to do groceries. That would have never happened 20-some-odd years ago. We're in a changing environment. We're losing officers that are going to different departments that do not have to deal with the BS on the streets. I want to support them. They're doing an excellent job. I could not do their job. At my age, I have no patience for dealing with that. I commend them. I would actually like to see a larger increase and increase it. They put themselves in the line of duty. We just had what happened this past weekend. That could have easily been an officer on patrol that something like that happened to, because they'd just have been a target. We're having a hard time retention and recruiting. I would much rather spend money giving the police officers than spend money on a park and moving forward. I think that's the infrastructure. So I'm all in favor of it. I'd like to see more. Thank you.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to concur and agree 100%. I, too, will be voting for this, in favor of this, but I, too, agree that it should be more. I just recently saw some new sign-on bonuses in other communities, and I was kind of shocked at the amount of money that they were giving the new police officers, or trying to recruit police officers to go there. And I find that really concerning, because our Lewiston Police Department are amazing police officers, the whole crew, and I would hate to lose anybody. And I understand our fiscal responsibilities, but I would have to agree 100%. I wish that we could pay them a whole heck of a lot more. Thank you.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can keep it brief by saying ditto and ditto to my colleagues that have spoken already. I think a lot of people know that this was my line of work for 45 years. It has changed substantially. Since I started, I speak to some of the old cops in the neighborhood, like Deputy City Administrator over there. In fact, we had a conversation this morning. Things have changed, and these guys do a tremendous job. They are accredited by CALEA, have been for 25 years, and yet we have towns a third the size of Lewiston offering $25,000 signing bonuses, and they don't have an accredited police department. Yet we've got guys that stick it out here. Kudos to them. I mean, it is not an easy job, and I don't know how many in the last year, how many shots have been winged off at police officers, but I believe it's more than once. So it's a great thing we're doing here, but it's not enough. I would like to do more as well. Thank you.
Yes, the men and women of our police department deserve our sincere thanks. I think, Chief, my quote in the paper this weekend, I don't have much more to add than that, but I deeply appreciate your work and the work that your agency does for us every single day. Thank you very much. Public comment for this agenda item?
Jason Lavoie, 242 Park Street. Am I correct to assume this is for police patrol wages only? Or is it all non-union collective bargaining agreements?
It is for all settled contracts, so it includes police, supervisory, MSCA, ProTech, and Public Works. We're in current negotiations with the fire union right now, so I'm sure similar recognition will be made with that group as well. It also includes the non-union personnel, and then there is a pay scale adjustment versus just the COLA adjustment for the police grade step table.
Great. Thank you. That was my only question, because I fully realize and I respect the work that the police department does every day in our community. But I also respect the work of the little secretary that sits upstairs in general assistance that might need a little bit of extra in a tough economy, or that sits in the finance office doing the books every day. If that includes them, even greater. It's definitely needed in this economy, especially with things being tight, with the high gas prices and And just everyday needs going up. I definitely commend, I wish the police got paid more for what they put up with, because as a past mental health patient, not any time recent, but they've had to take me voluntarily to the hospital, and I appreciated that they kept me safe. They kept me safe, and they kept me on the up and up, and they were actually very kind to me. So there's a stigma there that they treat mental health patients very bad, but they don't. The police department in Lewiston is actually very kind to people that are voluntarily mental health patients that just need a little bit of help. And not only that, but addressing crime in our city. If we don't have good police officers and pay them well, the crime is just going to increase. And also our public works personnel do a great job even keeping our parks looking good. They have a job to do doing that, but or even making, I saw Public Works over at the pool getting it ready, and everything they did, amazing, the work they did to get that pool ready. So I definitely think this is something that's definitely needed. Thank you.
Back to the council for discussion. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Agenda item number 11.
Item number 11, order authorizing the disposition of 34.68 acres, a portion of 420 River Road, to the Lewiston Auburn Water Pollution Control Authority. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the disposition of 34.68 acres, a portion of 420 River Road, to the Lewiston Auburn Water Pollution Control Authority.
Move for passage.
Councilor Clement, seconded by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Or anything you'd like to kick us off with, Director Brenchick?
I'd just like to say that, you know, the regulatory climate with PFAS and everything else is that it's to our best interest to separate out this part of the closed landfill and let LOPCA be responsible for both sides of us sharing that. So they'll continue with the stewardship and the regulatory pieces. And it's closed. There's no more anything being added to that. So we've protected the pump station that we have in that little corner. So that's why the line isn't so straight on that one side. But it is going to protect us and some shared costs down the road.
Discussion or questions from the council? Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 12.
Item number 12, order authorizing the city administrator to take the necessary steps to sell the city-owned property at 24 Walnut Street. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the city administrator to take the necessary steps to sell the city-owned property at 24 Walnut Street.
So moved.
Councilor Harriman, followed by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 13.
Item number 13, order establishing the 2022 festival zones for the Great Falls Balloon Festival and the Dempsey Challenge. Requested action to approve the order establishing the 2022 festival zones for the Great Falls Balloon Festival and the Dempsey Challenge.
So moved.
Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor Harriman. Discussion? Councilor Scott?
Thank you. I just had one question. Now that the farmer's market has moved to Oxford Street, are we going to ensure that there's not going to be like any parking in there if they can still have their
We
farmer's
had
market?
discussions with the farmer's market explaining about the balloon festival and the Dempsey Challenge. So I know just today, actually, the information was exchanged between Josh, Nadine, and the folks from the balloon festival so they can coordinate the events for that. So that they knew that going in, that those two big events were going to be happening. So they before they moved from their location to Bates Mill over there, they were aware of that.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Public comment? Back to the council? I'm excited about these two events. Summer's back. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 14.
Item number 14, order authorizing application and acceptance of funds from the U.S. Department of Justice Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant Program. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the application and acceptance of funds from the U.S. Department of Justice Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant Program.
May I have a motion? Councilor Pease.
Second.
Followed by Councilor LaChapelle. Excuse me. Discussion. Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 15.
Item number 15, request for donation of in-kind city services for the 10th Annual Commit to Get Fit Challenge. Requested action to review the request submitted by St. Mary's Regional Medical Center for an in-kind donation of city services totaling $1,694 and to determine a course of action.
So
I have
moved.
a motion. Councilor Jelinas, seconded by Councilor Pease. Discussion? We have a question about what day this is going to be on.
16th.
What day is, I'm sorry.
October 16th?
Oh, what?
Sunday? Or is that a Saturday, Sunday?
It's a Sunday.
Sunday, yes.
Sunday. Yeah, I'm excited. I was involved in Commit to Get Fit in a past life, and I'm excited that it's on this side of the river. Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
And Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Agenda item number 16.
Item number 16, resolve requesting, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'll start again. Resolve requesting increased state involvement for better outcomes for those unhoused. Requested action to adopt the resolve requesting increased state involvement for better outcomes for those unhoused.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor Jelinas. Seconded by Councilor Pease. Council discussion? Councilor Clement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I would caution my colleagues here is be careful what you ask the state for. Any of you that have read LD 2003, you know what the state is doing to local control. We ask them to gang up on a problem. We can't always be sure of what they're going to do or what they're going to take away from us. And I would just be very careful of what we ask for. I believe this is the so-called Biddeford resolution.
That's correct.
This was proposed by administrator or manager, I'm not sure what his title is down there, Mr. Bennett from,
Correct.
formerly of Lewiston, that's in Biddeford now. But you got to be careful with Augusta. You know, they are looking to remove local control. Thank you.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along those same lines, I plan on approving and voting for this in favor, but I think that we need to have a discussion with our legislative liaisons, and I don't know that we've had a meeting set up. I know that that's generally something we do, and I would like to have some further discussion about what they're already doing up there. I did have a conversation with Representative Cloutier in regards to our workshop this evening, and there was some money that had been slated through some of the American Rescue Act money that she had worked on for the homeless that might have been, had we maybe had a conversation sooner, but there's absolutely no money left over on some of that. So I think that we need to, when we're moving forward with any of these discussions, especially when we're asking for this state to help out, we need to have those discussions with our representatives and see what they're doing, because they may be doing some work that we want to know about, and we can work with them. I think that's important.
Public comment?
Again, Jason Lavoy, 242 Park Street. And while I have to agree with Councilor Clement and Councilor Scott along those lines, there's a lot going on at the state level to address homelessness as it is anyway. I can just think about all the things Maine Housing is doing. And you guys have already started the process of addressing homelessness locally here. And the state is doing a lot too through Maine Housing and HUD funds. You know, could they do more? Absolutely. There's a lot they could do a lot more. That doesn't guarantee they're going to do it, and that doesn't mean a resolution means they're going to do it. But I guess it can't hurt to pass this and have discussions with the legislative delegation. And I would say not only this current legislative delegation, but the next elected one as well, because the election's coming right up, and the next session probably won't be until next January. And things will have to be addressed. So I would actually argue that homelessness is an issue that affects every major municipality. And I would actually argue that whoever represents Lewiston City Council on the Maine Municipal Association, that they take this issue on, because it's affecting Portland, South Portland, Biddeford, Brunswick. It's affecting every municipality. And I would really like to see the Maine Municipal Association take some stance on the homelessness issue, because it's affecting the statewide population, and every municipality is struggling. Even Portland has been asking for more money from the state. They haven't passed a resolution, but they have asked for the state to intervene. So I would argue that the Maine Municipal Association may be worth looking into, getting their support behind a movement and helping and getting the state to kick in something, because the Maine Municipal is very effective in what they do, so, in helping municipalities. So thank you.
Back to the council for discussion. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 17.
Item number 17, appointments to the Androscoggin County Budget Committee. There are 3 separate items for requested action due to the 3 separate ballots for the county district. So each one is a request, we'll do them one at a time, but each one is a request to review the list of candidates and then to determine 2 candidates to cast a vote for. And I will remind you that according to the language in the county charter, at least one of those 2 members from each district must be a municipal official, and you will look at the ballots and notice that they are notated accordingly. So we could do, we can start with District 1, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay. So
Sounds great to me.
District 1, to review the list of candidates to serve as the District 1 Lewiston representatives to the Androscoggin County Budget Committee, and to determine which 2 candidates to cast a vote for on the county ballot.
So moved.
Councilor Harriman, followed by Councilor Pease. Discussion?
Is this,
Right, so.
Or can you?
Right,
yeah.
so this would be to review the list of candidates, and then to determine which candidates would be, the council would be interested in. So I'll just indicate that for District 1, there is only 1 municipal official. So we've already mentioned, I think previously at a previous meeting, that it would be Councilor Pease. So then really the decision point before the council at this point would be to review the 4 names submitted and to determine which one the council as a whole would like to support.
And so we'll just take nominations and then vote on each one. Is that what you're thinking?
Sure. Yep, that's fine. Sure.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would nominate Alicia Ray as the resident representative. Thank you.
Councilor Clement.
Mr. Mayor, I would nominate Robert Reed, resident for the Budget Committee.
Councilor Jelanis.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had an opportunity to review the applications, and I would endorse Councilor Harriman's nomination of Alicia Ray.
Councilor Pease.
I'd like to nominate Robert Reed also for the Lewiston Resident Budget Committee.
Any other nominations? Do we have discussion on these two, or do we simply just go to a vote?
You can certainly have discussion, and then since both have been nominated, we will do a vote on each one, and a counselor would only be able to vote once on each of the two nominees, Ms. Ray and Mr. Reed.
Okay. Discussion on the candidates? Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say that, my personal opinion, both candidates are good choices. I mean, Mr. Reed has a history of being with the Finance Committee and being a city councilor, and former Councilor Ray has been the most recent person on there and is up and very well-versed in what's been happening recently. So I think that both are actually a good choice, and so I have a hard time with that, but that's all I have to say. I think both are good choices.
Yeah.
Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Sure. So we will vote on the nomination of Alicia Ray first. So if you are in favor of having Alicia Ray be the resident nominee or the resident selected to serve on the District 1 Budget Committee, you would say yes. At this time, if you would prefer to vote for the other nominee, you would say no at this time, with the understanding that you would be voting for the other one. Ward 7 in favor or opposed to Alicia Ray?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
No.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
No.
Ward 5?
No.
And Ward 6?
No.
Thank you. And then, so the motion fails by a vote of 3 to 4, and then we would be voting for the nomination of Robert Reed. Counselor from Ward 7?
No.
Ward 1?
No.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
No.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
And Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 4 to 3. So at this point now, Mr. Mayor, we would appreciate a approval of a motion to vote to appoint Larry Pease as the municipal official representative for District 1 and Robert Reed as the resident.
So yes, we've had, it was moved by Councilor McCarthy and seconded by Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you. Are you ready for the vote?
Please call the vote.
Okay, so all those in favor, I'm sorry, so Counselor from Ward 7, which would be to approve the slate for
Yes.
District 1. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
And Ward 6?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0. The next item, Mr. Mayor, would be the ballot for District 2, and you will see that there are 2 names printed there. One is a municipal official, Councilor Scott, and the other one is a resident. So basically, if the council was interested, these 2 folks were nominated, so I believe that is the, those are the options, because there is no write-in line on the ballot, so I believe since these 2 folks were nominated at the caucus, these would be the only eligible candidates, is my understanding.
We could just vote on both, or do we need to vote on them separately?
You could vote on them together if you'd like, because there's really no choice to be made as far as the other nominations.
Let's do that. May I have a motion? Councilor LaChapelle, seconded by Councilor Pease.
Yes. Right, all set for the vote?
Please call the vote.
Thank you. Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0. And then the third ballot is District 3, and there is one municipal official that was nominated at the caucus, which is Councilor Clement, and there is a line for a write-in motion. So I wasn't at the caucus. I'm not sure if this was discussed at all, but it appears that the council would have an opportunity to nominate someone from the floor and write them in where there is a write-in line and a write-in box on the ballot. That's how it appears to me. But we didn't receive any additional instruction on that other than the cover letter that's enclosed in your packet, and the cover letter did not address that issue. So it is a ballot with a write-in line, so it does appear that if the council wanted to nominate someone right now and vote for them, that would be allowed under the county process.
And they would need to live in District 3.
District 3 of the county.
Right.
Right, which of
Yeah,
course
yeah.
doesn't fully match up with our county lines. We do have access to the state voter registration database. If we need to verify any residency for you at this time, we would just need a pause of about a couple of minutes to look that up.
Councilor Scott?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to report that, you know, we were there. Councilor Pease was there. Councilor Councilor Clement was there, Councilor Clement. And there was nobody that stepped up for this position, nobody at all from any other community or anything. And I was actually very pleased that Councilor Clement stood up, because there was nobody that stood up, and he said, I will do it. I don't know that he was ready for that. He just happened to be there at that meeting, and he did that. So I don't know who we have for another person, and I really feel like, me personally, I don't know what those lines are or who we could nominate. I feel kind of a little leery about that, because I don't know where the lines are. Are we talking about in the Lisbon area? You know what I mean? I'm not sure, and I don't really know anybody that we would nominate, so that's where I don't know.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Clement.
My understanding to be a greater part of Ward 6, the towns of Durham and Greene that comprise District 3. Nobody at the caucus stood up for any one of the positions. The municipal officials in Durham and Greene, I believe, would be a select board. So I think they would have the same function as we do here in casting a ballot or putting somebody in. I know of nobody in the city of Lewiston that has expressed any interest. I haven't gone knocking door to door, but just, you know.
Yes, and I would have hesitancy to put forth a name here without, you know, for instance, our deputy administrator calling them and making sure that they were up for service. Could we just vote on just Councilor Clement at this time?
Yes, I think that's perfectly fine, and I apologize if I indicated otherwise. So I think it's perfectly allowable just to vote for the name that's printed on the ballot at this time, and just to not vote on the other opening at this time.
Are we mostly in agreement with that? Moved by Councilor LaChapelle and seconded by Councilor McCarthy. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Great. Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5? Yes. Ward 6?
I'll abstain.
Abstaining. Okay, thank you. Motion passed by a vote of 6-1.
You know,
Sorry, 6-0.
I think Councilor Pease voted for himself. Agenda item number 18.
You've got to understand, Mr. Mayor, no good deed goes unpunished.
Item number 18, appointment of a city council representative to the Riverfront Island Master Plan Stakeholder Group. There are 2 items for requested action. One is to review and discuss the position and to determine which councilor is interested in serving as the city council representative to the Riverfront Master Plan Island Group Stakeholder Group.
So is staff requesting that it's a member of the council, or does it need to, how did this come about?
We are formulating a stakeholder group to vet some of the initial discussions of the plan before it goes out to public comment. It will go out to public comment both in person and electronically. Feedback will be obtained. The stakeholder group will reconvene, and then it would move forward. So there is, I think Shelley had indicated there's probably 4 to 6 meetings tops related to this.
And to interrupt you, Administrator Hunter, I apologize for jumping the gun here. May I have a motion on this item?
Well,
Councilor LaChapelle?
it's the discussion part of it that we're talking about now.
Right, which would allow any councilor to express.
Oh, we're discussing, and then we will
Right.
have a motion to, okay.
Right.
All right. Councilor LaChapelle?
Thank you. 4 to 6 meetings, when? During the day, at night?
It's going to be a combination. Once we determine who's on the stakeholder group, we will look for a time and date that works for everybody.
And how many members are they looking for on this whole?
Right now, there's a group of staff members. We're looking for a developer down in that area. We're including one of the larger event coordinators for that park. We're looking at Museum LA and or one of their board members. So it's people that surround that area and use that park is who we're looking at and there's a planning board member I think we've requested as well. That was the other group.
Thank you.
If it pleases the council, I would like to serve.
I'll concur.
Although the question is which city councilor?
City council representative, I believe, could be the mayor under charter, Mr. McCarthy. He is a member of the city council by definition in the charter.
Interested in serving as the city council. Well,
It says which city council, I'm just pointing that out.
Is it, could it be the mayor, or does it need to be a councilor? It's kind of listed two different ways.
It's a stakeholders group, so it could be filled by either office.
Okay. I'm still nominating myself.
I'll second the nomination.
Well, he can't.
Well, perhaps, yes.
Nominate himself. I'll nominate.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
We have a motion by Thank you, Councilor LaChapelle. A second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilor Clement. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. Everybody. Agenda item number 19.
Item number 19, appointment of a city council representative to the Lewiston Seniors Advisory Council. There are 3 items for requested action. The first one is to review and discuss the position and to determine which city councilor is interested in serving as the council representative to the Lewiston Seniors Advisory Council. So similar process to what you just held. Folks could express an interest in serving if interested.
Yeah, does anyone, who would like to serve?
Well, I think Linda Scott would be interested in serving that position.
I'll serve on that. I would be.
Do we have a motion for that?
We nominate Linda Scott for that.
Councilor McCarthy has moved. Do we have a second? Second by Councilor LaChapelle. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council? You would do a fine job serving.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Abstain.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, you do have a right to vote since the councilor abstained. I apologize if you'd like to vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Agenda item number 19,
me.
number 20.
Excuse me, agenda item,
Don't we have to finish the rest of that one?
well,
wait,
it was nominated, oh, yes, thank you, I apologize. Item
Thank
number
you.
3, per requirement of the city policy governing the Lewiston Seniors Advisory Council, the names of the appointment shall be read into the record. At-large seats, Julia Colangelo and Marcia Baxter. Ward 1, Roger Fuller. Ward 2, Linda Copus. Ward 3, Susan Charles. Ward 4, Mike Littlejoe. Ward 5, Mike Martell. Ward 6, Ed Barrett. And Ward 7, Donna Gallant.
If I may, Madam Clerk, I meant to check on this earlier. I think Miss Colangelo is actually Julie, Julie.
Okay, thank you. We will clarify. Thank you.
I'm about 90% sure.
Okay, we'll double check. Thank you very much.
Are we ready to move to the next agenda item? Or?
Yes, I believe so. Yep.
Okay. Agenda item number 20.
Item number 20, appointment of a citizen member to the Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee. There are 2 items for requested action. The first one, to review the applications and to nominate 1 citizen to serve on the Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee.
We have some applications in front of,
Going to make a
or are
motion
we
on that?
fine?
I guess not.
Madam Clerk, what is the process?
Right,
from
sure.
here?
So we received 8 applications, and we have forwarded those to you. They are in your packet, and we also emailed those to you on Thursday evening, so you could have a chance to review them if you were interested. Yep, so again, we could take some nominations from the floor, and then we could vote just like we did for the County Budget Committee.
Okay, so yeah, Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would nominate Paul Robinson for the Lewiston Transit Committee, Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee, or I guess that's what it's called, yes.
Yes, there we go. Councilor Jelinas?
I would endorse that nomination.
Okay. Councilor Harriman?
I would nominate Jason Lavoie also.
I'll second that.
Councilor Pease?
Nominate Paul Robinson.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Scott?
I just want to make a comment that I thought it was great that we had so many people looking to serve and so many applications. I think sometimes we have a very hard time finding people that are willing to serve on these different committees. And we had, 8 to go? I mean, this was pretty great. So I appreciate that, and I want that out there. I think it's good.
Madam Clerk, what is the next step here?
Sure, so the 2 nominees, excuse me, were Paul Robinson and Jason Lavoie, so we can vote individually on those 2 nominations if the council's ready to do so.
Public comment first?
Sure, that's fine. You can also have discussion as well, yes.
Oh,
absolutely.
okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, sorry, 1 second, Mr. Lavoie. Discussion first? Public comment now.
Jason Lavoie, 242 Park Street, and I know you may already have your minds made up, but I want to encourage you to support me for the Transit Committee. I have been a longtime Lewiston resident for over 8 years now. I have been a rider on CityLink. I talk to passengers all the time. I talk to bus drivers. I get their feedback. I can tell you every concern they have. We have concerns about the schedule. We have concerns about the bathrooms in the Lewiston bus station not being open and the vandalism going on. I know the schedule. I know the drivers. I know all the riders. And I really want to encourage you to support me. I've been looking for a way to serve the community on a committee the best I can, and I think this is a great opportunity for me. And I want to encourage you to think outside the box and give me a chance. I've talked to Councilor LaProchelle. He agrees that I'm an advocate for Lewiston, and the least of these that don't necessarily aren't able to drive because they don't have a license and need to take public transportation. I go to Looking Ahead Clubhouse, and many of our members take public transportation. They take it not only to Clubhouse, but to various appointments. I get my disabled bus pass at City Hall every month. And I just think I would make an amazing addition to this committee, and I want to encourage you to give me a chance. And I've tried everything to be appointed to a committee, and the mayor hasn't given me a chance. None of the mayors have ever given me a chance, even though I bring a lot to the table. So please, give me a chance. That's all I'm asking. I know I can serve well. I know I can do well. I'll even get input from you folks on how to address things. I spoke at several city council meetings, and we didn't always agree. But at the end of the day, I was respectful, and I was able to speak my positions clearly and give personal experiences. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Back to the council for discussion. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Sure, so Mr. Robinson was nominated first, so we'll be doing the vote for Mr. Robinson first. Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
No.
Ward 4?
No.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 2, okay. And then Counselor from Ward 7 to vote for Mr. Lavoie.
No.
Ward 1?
No.
Ward 2?
No.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
No.
And Ward 6?
No.
Motion failed by a vote of 2 to 5. Yes, so that completes it. So the appointment, excuse me, would be to appoint Mr. Robinson as the Lewiston citizen representative to the Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee for a 3-year term, said term to expire January 7th, 2025.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Reports and updates from the committee. Councilor Scott.
Thank you. It's summertime. I didn't realize I was getting my report ready for the school committee and realized that I have 2 reports to give because there were 2 meetings. So we had a meeting on June 27th and a meeting on July 11th. And some of the things I wanted to report, there were many things that happened. A lot of times what happens in the summer is personnel. And I'm here to report tonight that we did nominate and approve new principals and assistant principals at several of the schools. We nominated and approved John Radke as the new Lewiston High School principal. We approved Amanda Winslow as the new principal at Lewiston Middle School. We approved Andrew Bard as the new principal at Farwell. And then we approved assistant principals at Lewiston Middle School, Geiger, Montello, and McMahon. We also did approval of several field trips, policy updates. We had our presentation, like the city had from JCI, on energy efficiency. And we also had an update on Longley School. We actually had 2 updates on Longley School. I'm happy to report that a lot of work has been done. The adult education is back in there. There is a lot of programming going back in there. That community event happened this past weekend there. It is because of the amazing facilities staff that stepped up and just went in there, volunteered the time, and they just did an amazing job. There's still work to be done, but I just wanted to give a shout out and appreciation to that facilities staff for the work that they got done on there. We're still waiting for final reports from the insurance company, and we're still waiting to hear from the superintendent about any possible disciplinary hearings moving forward. But according to the superintendent, that will be happening. I'm not sure of any details as of yet. I also want to report that as of yesterday, I believe we got the email that the teachers have finally come to an agreement with the school committee and that a contract has been agreed upon, and the teachers will be voting on it Monday to ratify it, and then it will be coming to the school committee to vote on. So I thought that was good news because it's been a long negotiation with the teachers. Unfortunately, it had to actually go to mediation, and they finally come to an agreement. So I think that that's a good thing moving forward. I believe that's all I have on that.
Anything from finance?
Moving right along, nothing exciting, nothing new. Just taking bids as they come in and approving them, and I can't think of anything outstanding.
Thank you. Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick shout out. The Lewiston Area Public Health Committee is sponsoring the second Rally for Recovery, and I would just ask folks tuning in tonight or people present to mark your calendars for Saturday, September 17th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. We're going to have a ton of food, ton of music, entertainment, but most importantly, testimony offered up to our community about folks who are in long-term recovery, folks who have been impacted by those affected by substance use disorder, and just a lot of education opportunities. We'll have a lot of tabling as well. We had our first planning meeting this morning, and it went very well, and so just really looking for great participation this year. Thank you. It's going to be held at Kennedy Park.
When is that again?
Saturday, September 17th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Further reports and updates? Now we're up to new business. Seeing none, or Councilor Scott?
Sorry, I have a full plate tonight. I apologize. I just wanted to report out that I had asked for a conversation with Bates College to have a discussion about some relationships between the neighborhood and the students. And I had a great meeting with Blake Riley, the Assistant Dean of Students and Student Affairs, last Friday. And we talked about meeting with the safety department of the school and furthering discussions to really promote a good neighborhood relationship and how we can work with the neighbors and the students. And I asked him to have fellow counselors, since all 3 here are part of that, our wards, are based around Bates College 1, 2, and 3. I ask that we have all 3 counselors as part of that conversation so that we can represent the neighbors in our wards that have expressed any concerns or anything. And I hope to have a report back that we are moving forward and everything's going to be great. I just want to say that it was a really, really good conversation. Bates College said that they are looking forward to working with the city council and moving things forward, and I was really excited about it, actually. I felt good about it, so that's all. Thank you.
Now, new business, if there is any.
Sure, and Mr. Mayor, if we could also just mention, we'll just mention to the council that the city is working on the redistricting of the local ward lines every 10 years based upon the number population shift on the federal census. The municipalities are required under the state constitution to take a look at their ward lines and adjust them accordingly, so there's no difference more than a 10% difference. The goal of redistricting, it's also called reapportionment, is to make sure, to the extent possible, that all of the 7 wards in the city have an equal number of residents in there, and it can differ only by 10%. So we are working with the city's GIS coordinator, Jim Ward, to look at the boundary lines, and we are hoping to bring that to city council. It is defined in our ordinance. Our ward lines are defined in our ordinance. So we're looking at potentially first passage on September 6th and final passage on September 20th. By the state constitution, municipalities need to have it done within 12 months of the state completing their ward lines, and they completed their House district boundary lines as of September 29th of 2021. So we will be looking at changing ours. Initially, I was thinking we could wait until next January to get ours done prior to next November's election, but we were reminded by the state today of that 12-month deadline. So we're going to start working on that a little sooner. So we're waiting to get the numbers from the Public Works Department to actually see how the wards are right now. I don't really know. All the numbers I have are the number of registered voters, which is not what is used. It's the federal census numbers, so we're waiting to get that to see how much variation we have, and I honestly don't even know how close or off it is right now. And then we're going to be looking at trying to adjust the lines. We take a lot of factors into account when we adjust the lines. The first thing we do certainly is the population number, but then we'll also look at, is it going to greatly disrupt the voting location for a large block of people? Are they going to be able to walk, or will they have to drive? We don't want to inconvenience people, so there's a different amount of factors that we take a look at, but staff will be looking at that, and we'll bring that to council in the fall.
Thank you. Councilor LaChapelle.
So, question. Let's say a counselor is right on a border. One side of the street is one ward, the other side is another ward. Well, if you move it and that counselor is no longer in that ward, what happens to that?
Right, we would obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, I apologize. We would attempt to avoid that as well and take a look at changing another part of the ward line and adjusting it so we do not displace a current elected official. That would not be the goal for both the school committee folks and the council. Yeah, thank you. Yes, so I should have clarified that. Yes, is that would also be another factor that we're looking at. Obviously, our goal is not to kick someone out of a current ward.
Well, you know I live right on the line. So
right on the bubble? Okay. You're going to need to move, Councilor LaChapelle. That's all there is to it. Yes, move further in.
You know, I'm able to live in any part of the city, so. Councilor Clement.
Quickly, a question from Madam Clerk. If we could get that data prior to the September meetings, if it's available, it would be appreciated.
Right, absolutely. My understanding is, it's famous last words, it's fairly easy to do, only because it's all computerized and you just move a couple lines and it will adjust accordingly. But we'll be absolutely get that to you, hopefully in August. Yeah.
Two things I never want to hear again. It's seamless and you're on mute. So. A motion to head to executive, or agenda item number 23. There we go.
Item number 23, executive session to discuss real estate negotiations of which the premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive bargaining position of the city.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor LaChapelle. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you guys for
Good evening, Lewiston, or good night.
Do you really want to be on a city committee someday?